on Monday, April 28th, 2025. I'm calling to order the select board meeting. We are meeting in the lower level of the Rutland Public Library. We are being recorded by Rutland Cable for live airing on local access as well as re-airing on local access. I believe we have a Zoom option available also, and we will be recorded for our social medias, YouTube and the like. We currently are a 4-member board in person. Jen, I believe, will be joining us later. If we can stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving right into our agenda, we have minutes, treasury warrant, and payroll. I would entertain a motion to approve treasury warrant 25-22 and 25-PW22.
Make a motion to approve treasury warrant 25-22 and 25-PW22. Second.
Any comments? All those in favor, or I guess roll call, Harry?
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. And we have minutes from our regular meeting of April 14th, 2025. I believe, and our town meeting warrant discussion, I believe we had some split board attendance, so I will separate them out. I would entertain a motion for the April 14th, 2025 regular meeting minutes in which everyone was in attendance.
Make a motion to approve meeting minutes, April 14th, 2025, regular meeting.
Second.
Any comments? Roll call, Harry?
Let me comment
Oh,
first.
sure.
On appointment resignations, it was noted on the second line that he had resigned from the Republican Town Committee, which he did not do. He didn't resign because that is not required under MGL. He only has to resign as an officer, not from the committee.
And I think he did state that he had resigned as, I think he was treasurer or something, I don't remember.
Yeah.
And so, thank you for that catch.
Okay.
Any other comments? Is everyone okay with that friendly amendment? I am.
Yep, I am.
So all those in favor of approval with the amendment,
Second, aye.
Mattson,
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. We have the meeting minutes from April 17th, which was the warrant setting meeting. I believe it was the three of us, Paul, Harry, and myself in attendance. I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of April 17th, 2025 as written.
I will second the motion.
Is there any conversation? Hearing none, roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Galvin abstain.
Whitman, aye. Sorry, Tom. Thank you. Is there anyone here for public comment?
Yes,
Name and address, please.
Jay Mealich, 80 Salisbury Street, Worcester, Mass, at the current address, that's where I live. I'm here asking for, to be put on the future agenda, the nearest future agenda. My son, Blake, and my daughter-in-law, Lauren, and Mark Weil are with me, he will be the builder. My son and I purchased lots on Wachusett Road. We started construction, and then we had to come to a halt. So I understand that I learned kind of after we had purchased it, the road is basically not passable. We had to cease construction in January. So what I'd like to do is get an appointment for the next earliest agenda, because I'm not on agenda tonight, to ask permission through the board here to have the road reinstated. It's to the point where it would be a maintained public road. And like at that meeting, I would have Mr. Zotley with me. He couldn't make it tonight, but this is not formal anyways. And we started putting our driveways in, and we couldn't. The vehicles were just up to the underside of the mud, so it's basically an unpassable road. And in January 2022, planning board did approve the 14 lot A and R. And somehow 7 months after, it was placed in an unmaintained status. And I wasn't around at that time, so I don't know what happened to it then. I just learned at this point now that it's still in unmaintained status and unpassable. So that's what would like to, officially go do whatever I have to do to get on the next meeting, so that we can put it on the mercy of the board to hopefully give us a decision we're looking for.
Thank you. We will look at the agenda for the upcoming meetings. Obviously, we have a board election and everything, so we will see how, timing wise, how that goes, and we'll make sure to communicate to you. Tamika, do you have contact information?
Did I leave it with you, Timmy? Okay, I can stop up tomorrow and leave it as
Okay.
That's fine.
contact information.
And we'll dig up the history of, because I think that it was a previous board that declared that road unmaintained.
Yes.
So just a background history for the current board members and to have that information as
Yeah,
well.
I think it hadn't probably been used. Now the house is starting to be developed, and I think that's what happened. And that in 2022, there was no houses. There was no, and it made sense probably at that time, but at this time it's not working too good. Not for me.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So I'll see you tomorrow.
thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Is there anyone else here for public comment? Name and address, please.
Jean Sigliano, Susie Drive. I'm just following up from Friday's meeting, if you got any of the information that I requested.
For the water and sewer and enterprise funds, I believe every year this is asked of our town administrator and DPW director. Austin, can you speak to this? I believe it was the question of the salaries in highway versus DPW.
Yeah, so generally, I think the way that we put together our water and sewer budgets, and now stormwater it's a percentage allocation of existing staff time. So, with the exception of the water department, who has full-time employees, sewer and stormwater, use staff hours from our existing highway staff. So for example, when we have folks that are street sweeping, we're charging our highway hours to the stormwater fund.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Gentlemen, can you take that conversation in the hallway, please?
So we don't have full-time FTEs per se in our sewer and our stormwater funds. So those calculations that are in those budgets are based off of historic averages and assumptions of working X hours per year for stormwater, for sewer, and also for water. Does that make sense?
So what I would like to see is wherever the documentation is that has that information. Because as a sewer and water user, I want to be sure that the money applied to water and sewer doesn't belong in roads. And we don't know that, we just have to trust that number. But I'd like to see the documentation that led to that number. There has to be some documentation, it didn't just get pulled out of someone's back pocket.
So I guess I have a question for you and I know that this isn't a discussion, a venue for a discussion, is what do you mean by you wanna make sure that money doesn't belong to
Well,
roads, right? So we don't charge to the sewer fund if we're not doing sewer work.
Well, I'd like to see the numbers. So if there's been so many hours that a DPW worked on sewer versus so many hours that they worked on roads, somewhere that number must exist. Somewhere those weekly, do they track it weekly? Weekly, do they put their hours under different categories? And then somebody tallies it up at the end of the year before you do the budget?
So are you asking for a payroll report?
I'm asking for whatever report you use that gives you the number of the percentage that goes to sewer, that goes to stormwater, and that goes to drinking water. How do you get to that percentage of what you're charging to those?
Sure, so we can give you a payroll report based off of the way that Rutland does their budgeting, we can give you a payroll report, and then based off of that, we can tell you the rationale for the assumptions for how we got to the budget number.
Okay.
So you're not gonna see a specific dollar value of 689 hours to the dollar value, very similar to our police, our fire. We'll round up a little bit, right, to make sure that we have allocation. We do the same thing with our overtime budget. So I wish we were a little bit more scientific here in Rutland, but we're not, especially for the way that we calculate our wages. We make assumptions based off of estimated staff hours as close as we can to what we think the needs are for the upcoming year. So we can produce that report and give you that report and tell you the assumptions. But I think you're asking for traditionally what was known as a payroll certification, which we do not create that document anymore.
Why? Or why not?
So that document, believe it or not, was actually created after the budget was adopted. So that was a decision that I made, that we had already gone through the budget development process. And we created a payroll certification more so as a check to make sure that the numbers that were adopted at town meeting matched the appropriations. In my opinion, that didn't make sense, so we changed a little bit how we instructed departments to calculate their payroll and provided them with wage worksheets for estimated what their hours were. Unfortunately, not every department did that. I think we have one department head here that does it every year, because actually he was the example for what we asked other departments to provide, but not every department did that. So I wish it was easy as I could also just go into my folders and give you that document, Gene, but I don't have that document from the particular department that you're requesting. So it's gonna take some work on our end to create that. And that's the correspondence that we've had back and forth, that we don't have something as easy as what you're asking for,
Well,
so it needs to
whatever
be
it is
created.
you've used something. I think that is a public document, whatever it is you've used, and I think the public should be able to see that, to see
So-
how you came to that number.
Yeah, again, but the document in the format that you're requesting doesn't exist, so I'm gonna create it for you. Because we didn't create we don't have a document like what the fire chief provided. And that's why, on the DPW side, it took a little bit more work for us to calculate that, quite literally, taking all the employees, their hours, we didn't create a document from it, we used just simply a calculator and came to a number. It
They
wasn't
came
as
to a number and
scientific as,
said,
for example, the fire
This
department.
percentage is water, this percentage is sewer, and this percentage
Yeah.
is stormwater.
Yeah.
But it's not based on any actual time.
No, that's not true.
Well,
So,
that's what I'm trying,
yeah, I
how do
mean,
you
so,
base it
so
on
the,
time?
the standard, I'll just use, for example, the sewer workers. I'm not gonna include water because they have their own full-time employees, but sewer is the one that's most complicated because we have several employees that are split between highway and sewer. There are some weeks where they work more on sewer, so we charge them more to sewer. So it's also not as easy as, half of the day they're working for highway, half of the day they're working for sewer. It's a little bit more complex on the sewer side here. And then for stormwater, it's also not every week or every day, every week, we're not doing stormwater work. So it's charged as needed when, again, when we're street sweeping, when we're doing catch basin cleaning, reporting,
so
things like
again, those
that.
are
So-
tallied somewhere. There must be a spreadsheet that tallies up those hours.
No.
Otherwise, how do you get it?
No, there isn't a spreadsheet in the document in the format that you are requesting.
I'm not requesting any
Well,
particular
you did,
format.
you formally
I'm-
requested that in a.
I'm
in an email.
requesting whatever you use is what I said.
And I will get you the information that you're requesting.
And then I believe the other pieces were, to double check the salaries, and I think Austin, you were double checking the, recreation and safe
Yeah,
place
on the revolving
salaries, the
funds, yep.
revolving fund salaries.
Yep.
And revenue sources, I believe we can ask to have everything kind of put in one document, but I think most of the revenue resources or sourcing are available online, it's just not in that, approved budget document that we have.
Yeah, so there's there's two places where folks can find revenue. They can find it in the original budget document that showed local receipts, showed property tax revenues. That was in the original document that's dated February 3rd. Then also subsequently, we also created the budget portal, which has its own page, revenues, and you can see in explicit detail 5 years. It was also updated to include the most recent decision by the select board. That's probably the easiest way to access it, so you don't have to download a PDF. Budget.rutlandma.gov/revenue. Is the page.
And I've been in email correspondence with Dr. Capucci at Glenwood to, and have a ticket in with, Wachusett IT to facilitate, if needed, AV stuff for town meeting to ensure that we have adequate audio there.
Okay, and then, so if the general public wants to see where the revenue's coming from, they have to go to that portal? Is that where that is? That's,
That, in my opinion,
you're not gonna have
that's,
it printed at all? For
no,
the
and we
public
never
to
do.
see?
For town meeting, we don't. But it is in a format that's already accessible on the town website in the PDF from the budget that was originally presented. The only thing that's changed is how much free cash. However, there's also another document that I sent to you, which is the multi-year forecast, which shows all of the revenue. It shows property tax, it shows new growth, it shows local receipts, it shows state aid, and it shows the expenses. On one page, you see revenues and expenses there.
And it's the new revenues?
Yep, and that's the most updated one that I gave you.
And then finally, where's Wachusett Road? It's on Article 25. I couldn't find it on a map.
It's off of Ridge Road. It's pretty much going near the Princeton town line.
Don't get me started.
And that's a citizen's petition.
Right,
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
I saw it
Yeah,
on there and I tried to find it to see what they're talking
Yeah.
about and I couldn't.
Yeah.
When you put it in Google Maps, it just gives you Wachusett Street.
Because.
Is there anyone else here for public comment? Hearing none. Communications, member comments, announcements, and town administrator updates. I want to say we had, the board had received official communication from Austin. Congratulations, Austin, in accepting the position as Sutton's new town manager, and that, transition timeline. So thank you and congratulations. I've appreciated working with you the past couple years. I wish our tenure was longer and I wish you all great success moving forward. We are in full swing with spring sports. Baseball, I believe it was opening weekend this past weekend for Rutland Little League. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't so great. It wasn't very spring-like weather. But just be mindful, especially driving up and down Palmagussit around Marsh Field, that the kids are out and crossing the road a lot. Also around Memorial Field and Central Tree, there's gonna be a lot more kids out with the spring sports and everything. We wish all of our schools, sports as well as our local community and club sports a great season. We're heading into graduation season for our high school seniors and college seniors. Colleges are winding down the next couple weeks, so congratulations and good work, and we wish everyone well in their future endeavors there. Do any other board members have any comments?
I'm sorry to see the rain come this Saturday for the, on the common. I was there. I think there was 5 people there on the common. But I understand traffic was heavy, so maybe throughout the rest of the town, the sites got visited for that.
And
Nice job.
And as a follow-up to that, for the 4th of July, I believe 4th of July has been putting out calls for anyone that's interested in donating or continuing the fireworks and everything that's been put out on the 4th of July social media page as well. So thank you for all the work on the, to echo Harry's comments on the townwide yard sale and darn the weather. Any other board member? Austin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep, thanks for the very nice words. Obviously, I wanna thank this board and the previous board for the opportunity to serve in this position. While I agree that, I wish my time here was longer, I'm proud of, some of the work that we've been able to accomplish. And, really proud of town staff. I think they do an outstanding job with limited resources. Limited virtually everything, and they do a tremendous job. As I think I've mentioned in previous discussions, I think there's definitely a lot of room for growth with the town administrator position here. I'm gonna be honest, it's been a challenge over the past 2 years, and I look forward to seeing the further development of this position within the organization. And I know that this board and future boards will do good work on that. And will be fully supportive of the transition for the board and interim administrator, future administrator. I don't live far for now. I will be here to answer any question and help anyone with any questions that they may have. want to just make note of the Telegram and Gazette article that covered the 4th of July celebration. Ben from the town clerk's office also spoke with the Telegram, representing the 4th of July committee about some of the challenges that we're experiencing and the committee is experiencing in funding the 4th of July celebration. I spoke more so on the budget side and the impacts and some of the challenges that we have. So if folks have any questions, please feel free to refer to the Telegram and access that material. The Regional Dispatch District, 4 out of 5 towns have approved tonight. There's no real wood around, but the fifth and final community, OCAM, they're actually meeting, I think, right now, and they'll be contemplating that district agreement tonight. Once it is fully approved by all 5, we do have to send for one final ratification, if you will, to the state 911 department. We use their model agreement, so we don't see any issues there. But once it is approved by state 911, then it is final. And then the board of directors will meet and kind of organize, and we'll start the process of transition there. We did have a resignation of a DPW mechanic. So we will work with Director Kolofsky to work on an advertisement to refill that position. So if you know of anyone who's interested in working for the DPW mechanic, it's a decent job. Please feel free to reach out. It is posted on the town website. We'll be bidding this week for, well, actually, we're putting out a lot of bids. Spring, summer, and fall paving. This will be a pretty good year for us for paving. We've got still fair share monies that are left over. We've got our regular Chapter 90 allotment. And if the Chapter 90 bond bill is approved, we'll have actually double our Chapter 90 allotment. So a pretty good year and future years for paving. We're also putting out new bids for our water treatment chemicals. This, I am expecting, will be a challenging bid for us. Just my experience serving as the representative on the Upper Blackstone board, some of their chemical bids have gone almost double what they were budgeting and expecting, impacted by the tariffs. So much that even some of the vendors are reaching out to Upper Blackstone and saying they can't honor their commitments for already contracted services. So I'm a little concerned with the water treatment chemicals bid. If we don't see favorable results through the bidding process, we may turn to a consortium in the area. It's essentially like a collective purchasing agreement for recently or already contracted bid water chemical materials that we can kind of jump onto their procurement. But we'll be putting that out this week, the regular bid, to see what those results are. And then finally, catch basin cleaning services through our stormwater fund, something that's required for us to do annually. We do contract this out just simply because we don't have the proper equipment. I don't know what that, I'm just gonna call it an arm truck. I don't know what the official term is, but to be able to clean out the catch basin, we contract that out. As part of that service, they also do some of the reporting. So what we have to do every time we clean out a catch basin is report what we saw and what we essentially took out of it. So with Weston and Sampson, they've developed a portal for us, so the vendor can come in, log in, tag the catch basin, see what they cleaned out of it, and that's stored into a database so we can report that annually and keep track of that. So we kind of get more out of it than just what we probably would normally do with our regular services. And then finally, I shared with the board earlier, and it's posted on the budget and financial information page, the FY24 audited financial statements. Clean audit. This was the override budget year, so you saw some probably healthier numbers than normal because we had a lot more resources than normal. So, pretty big turn back on all departments, healthy reserve balances, but we're very pleased with the results. Of course, if you have any questions about the details of the audit, please feel free to reach out to myself or Donna. And that's it.
Does anyone have questions for Austin?
Austin, one thing, I saw on the news about the fluoride. How does that apply to us as far as fluoride in the water?
So there is a citizen's petition on the town meeting warrant article to, I think, instruct or request the board to send an official correspondence to our overarching agency, Mass DEP for water, to consider reducing or removing our obligations with any fluoridation of our water through the water treatment plant. I think it's a result of a lot of the attention that you're probably hearing and seeing nationally on the news about fluoride and impacts. I am not sure how much weight a citizen's petition will have. I think it's gonna be non-binding, candidly, for the board. And I'm not sure how much leeway the town will get in terms of seeking relief for something that may or may not be required by DEP, not just of us, but of every public water system. So, Tom, I don't know a lot of the details about, what our requirements are for fluoride. I can follow up with you on it, but.
No, I just happen to see it on the news, there's like a dozen states that are
Yeah.
trying to get it out of the water, and Mass was one of them.
Yeah, there's interestingly enough, we have, Massachusetts is one of the most aggressive for how we treat our water. Like, we do a lot of things that, in comparison to even just nearby states that we don't do. But also, it's very also dependent on the biology, I guess, maybe, I don't know, or chemistry, I think maybe is the right one, of your water. So, like, we, for example, have a lot of manganese, so we treat it with more materials and chemicals than maybe some other public water systems nearby. So that also varies per community based off of, again.
What the readings are, yeah. Yep.
So.
Good,
And
thank you.
I don't wanna misspeak, but I think during COVID, there was some issues with obtaining fluoride and some of the other treatment chemicals. And I believe fluoride was one that we had put on the back burner as far as list of priorities, because the accessibility of it was just cost prohibitive and a much longer delay, I think. I remember that conversation with Joe. So. Any other questions for Austin?
I do. Austin, are you at liberty to discuss why we lost the mechanic?
Yes and no. After discussions with this employee, they also notified us they were looking for other employment opportunities, so it was a mutual agreement to part ways.
Okay.
Any other questions? Name and address?
Dick Williams, 35 Overlook. Austin, do you, the names of the street that's gonna be paved?
No, we don't have we have some names of roads that I know we're gonna do some maintenance on. One, for example, we're gonna do a little bit of work on Ridge to kind of clean that up a little bit. Most of the ones that are in really, really, really bad shape.
Which was it, yeah.
Yeah, so Ridge is in really bad shape. I don't know if we're gonna do full depth on that one, and we may do just a mill and overlay on Ridge. And then there's a list of maybe 5 or 6 streets where we're gonna do something similar, or just light, patching a little bit, but we need to go out to bid first to see how much material we can have. If the bids are really high, we're probably not gonna do a lot of roads. I hate to say that, but so I can get you that list formally, Dick, when we have the bids coming.
Okay, thank you.
And I know this winter was really rough on a lot of the roads with frost heaves and everything, so kind of seeing how they play out through the spring, fall and mud season and everything as well, I imagine will rank in priority.
But I know one of the high priorities, and I also rated high, Ridge was one of them. I'm sorry, the most important one, just because we wanted to finish that work, was extending the work that was already done on Wachusett Street, from the most recent paving to the 68 town line. That's also in pretty bad shape, so.
That's the one I was concerned because of the pothole that was there that destroyed the front end of that car.
Yeah, so that's definitely one, if we have limited resources, that's one that we wanna try to attack.
Thank you.
But again, there's other areas of town that,
Oh, yeah.
we'll try to do some maintenance. I think the era of, completely repaving everything with all of our chapter 90 funds is probably gone unless we get, substantial stimulus from the state government on chapter 90, so it's mostly just kind of patch jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into appointments and resignations, we have the Fourth of July Committee. We have letters of interest for Karen Greenwood, Desiree Mangum, and Cindy Purcell. I'm not sure if Desiree is here tonight, but I know Karen and Cindy are. I don't see Desiree. We have the letters of interest as well as the letters of recommendation, I believe, from the Fourth of July Committee. And obviously heading into the busy season of the Fourth of July activities, more hands on deck and being able to make quorum at meetings is key. So does the board have any questions for, we have, like I said, we have Karen and Cindy here today.
You know me, I usually ask questions, but this is a tough one. So I'm just gonna kinda let them go tonight.
And I know our appointment policy is that we ask the individuals to be in person, and Desiree is not here, so is the board wanting to preclude Desiree from tonight's appointment and see if she can, had she attended your Fourth?
She's attended 2
Yeah.
of our meetings so far.
I don't know, I feel like the Fourth of July is right around the corner, so if
Right.
they wanna get moving on this,
If they can
need all
serve
the help
and,
you
Can you-
can get, right?
Because Desiree's not here, can you tell us a little bit about Desiree with the meetings? How you felt about her at the meetings?
Sure. She's attended and kind of joined in with the discussion of the kind of problems we're facing, and some ideas she's had to try to go around some of those options. She seems to be contributing just as a member kind of coming to our meetings, so.
What was your question again, Leah, to?
I said, I realize our policy is such that we ask that all interested parties are in attendance, but how did the board feel about Desiree not being here tonight, given the fact that, to Tom's point, the Fourth of July is right around the corner and she's attended a couple meetings already for the Fourth of July?
Do you need her on the committee, needless to say?
I mean, we'll take as much help as we can get.
I mean, I'm not a big one for sidestepping policy. But in my opinion, when people want to apply for the Fourth of July and it's right around the corner and you need the help, I guess I'm willing this one time to make an exception of that.
So I would, if no one has questions for Cindy or Karen, I would entertain a motion to appoint Karen, Desiree, and Cindy, I'm hearing including Desiree, to the Fourth of July Committee for a term expiring, it says 1-year term, but I would think it would be the end of the next year, correct? So fiscal year end of,
I mean, it's up to you, cause we had discussed about
Right.
extending our term limits at least
Right.
through the 4th of July, so I
Right.
don't know if you wanted to
right,
just do for the next couple months
Yep.
to
And we
finish
don't
off
have a-
this fiscal year and then maybe
yeah.
establish a new policy going forward.
We don't have a specific policy for the Fourth of July, our appointment policy doesn't speak to individual boards and committees, so that's why we kind of haven't looked at it at all yet, but I do think that there's value to extending the Fourth of July appointments at minimum through July of that calendar year, because that's when your work continues. So is the board wanting to appoint for through July of this year or through July of next year?
It says 1 year, let's do the one, just July of next year, right, let them,
Yeah, I don't want to do any longer than that. I mean, is it ridiculous to say just to the July first of this year when the 4th follows after the first, so maybe 1 year. I would like, if they're possible, to show up at a board meeting though, since we are going out the year, to at least show us who this person is and whether it's on Zoom or others, I would like him to show up at a board meeting. But I'm okay with going out to July first.
So I would, okay, I would, yeah.
alright, so I move to appoint Karen Greenwood, Desiree Magnum, and Cindy Purcell to the Fourth of July Committee for a 1-year term to
ending
ending in July of 2026.
26.
After the fourth, good?
Second.
Should we say
That all right?
Should we say July 5th?
Should we say August?
Or should we say July,
July 31st?
yeah, July
Okay,
31st?
July 31st of 2026.
Does that work for you guys, I think? It's kind of what we
I
talked
believe
about.
so, yeah. And then we can follow through with
Yeah.
upcoming appointments for
Yeah.
same timeline.
Is there a second to Tom's motion?
Yes, I second.
Okay, thank you. Any other conversation? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Galvin, I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you for showing up and thank you for volunteering. Jen, good luck. Karen and Cindy, good luck.
Wednesday night, at the Wood Studio at
Okay.
6:30.
Yeah, and I haven't attended any recently, but I've attended one or two in the past, and I would encourage any board members that are interested to go. I think that's a two-way street for me as far as, seeing the work that the committees that we appoint to are doing, as well as asking you to come to us as well. So thank you,
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
good luck. Oh, and you'll need to get sworn in, you know this, with the town clerk's office preferably before your next meeting, which is Wednesday night, so that way you can fully participate in the meetings. Tamika, I don't have Desiree's contact info, well, we do, but do you mind sending just a note to her to, ensure she gets sworn in also, please? Let her know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into old business, we have the pet food pantry. I believe Kara is here to continue speaking. If the board recalls, we had a few questions. It looks like we had confirmed with our insurance company through our office that there is no increased liability or cost to the town by having the pantries on town property. Austin and Kara.
Go for it.
All right. So I was also asked to walk around town. I chose one of the many rainy Saturdays to get some pictures of potential locations and also provide photos of what the finished pantry looks like. Thank you. Of course, I'm sorry that it printed very strangely. So the first potential, location on the whole was I was walking around Memorial Drive looking at the recreation area. The first photo shows it is kind of closer to the pool house. I was looking for flat surfaces that did not get quite so wet as that field tends to get. The second photo was further down Memorial Drive in that second parking lot area next to the ball field. If you flip the page over, again, sort of down that way, there is an existing clothing donation bin that I thought would make sense to have another donation bin for the pet food pantry and relatively flat. The second potential location, again, next to another clothing and shoe donation box. It's to the left of Century Oil. I don't know whose lot that
That's
is.
the church, I
That's
believe.
the
Is that the
I
church
think
lot?
that might be the church.
Okay. So I could even go straight to them potentially, if we wanted to pursue that. On the next page is Marsh Fields, going down the driveway towards Marsh Fields, there's that container of some sort.
That's Little League.
I was gonna say that would be Rutland Little League.
Okay.
It's Marshfield's town property, but it's leased to Rutland Little League.
Understood, okay.
So that's fine, and I think the church parking lot, I think it's St. Pat's Church parking lot, right?
Yeah.
Carrie, that's St.
Yes,
Pat's.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just so you know, for point of
Yeah, great.
reference, or reference.
Thank you.
Thank you for going around town on the rainy days. And sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, not at all. The back of the second page, just shows finished photos that we have of the pantry. The photos make it look a little bit taller and skinnier than it is. It's 27 inches long, just for reference.
And can you just refresh my memory, this is gonna be for what, any pet food or?
Yes, any
So
pet
if I
food-
donate dog food, say if I have cans of dog food and I put it in there, Is it just for anybody to pick up, or does it go to a shelter?
For anybody, yeah, so specifically targeting people that may be, in financial times
Yeah.
of need.
Okay.
You can't see in this photo really, but underneath, like in the pantry itself is that plastic, it's a 24-liter tote, just to maintain freshness of the food.
Thank you.
And where else is this done that you know of?
So I was given permission to install 2 of these in Grafton, and then there's the Central Mass Pet Pantry, which is like an actual shed, and it is employed by volunteers. That's in Shrewsbury. I did speak with them as well about any like liability questions. They do not have any specific liability insurance, other than just building and property. And then there's also the Westboro Girl Scouts have a pantry that is not wooden, it was purchased on Etsy, but like a metal prefab box, and that's at one of their churches.
I have a, Carol, when I look at the picture for the recreation area memorial field, I see this one here, where that box is. Where is the box down here? Where would the box be on this photo down here? Or is that the same one we're looking at?
So no, this is a different spot. The box, are you referring to the existing clothing box?
No, I mean, where your pet food box will go.
What number are you pointing at, Harry?
On this page, this piece right here, I'm not seeing anything, so I don't know what it is.
I understand okay, so, yeah, there aren't really any landmarks, but there's a road that leads to a residential neighborhood right here.
Yeah.
So if you're down Memorial Drive and you follow that road, there is that, it kind of goes up a hill, there's the second parking lot that is up a hill, and then there's another ball field right here.
So would you put that next to the wooded line, so it kind of blends in with that, so people can get out of their car and go right there?
Certainly could,
Because
yeah.
I'm seeing one right here on the ball field, then I'm seeing one over here on the ball, so you have 2 in Memorial Field, right?
Just as,
Okay.
potential options.
Okay, because I mean, this one here, it's pretty visible, so if we could blend it in, that would be only my issue on that, for that one there, because that's kind of where it's not in the center of town and so forth, so might work.
Sure.
And then, where are we here? And yeah, this one here where the church is, I'm not sure that's any town property at all. That's church, and then that is the Century Oil
Sure,
between the two, so you'd have to check with them, because that would be another town issue.
right, sure.
Right, okay, and then on this picture here, where I'm seeing the water, where would it be on this picture? I'm not seeing,
I was thinking freestanding, kind of by the, I guess right here, so behind that sewer. Or on the side where, like next to, or adjacent to this existing box.
That's the Planet Aid clothing donation box, I think.
Planet Aid clothing. Do they have any rights to that land or anything, or we just allow them to use that or what?
Yeah, no, we just signed an agreement with them. They give us a certain percentage, so of the clothes that they collect, they sell, we get a check from them, I think quarterly. So it's just the rights to use the space and a revenue sharing.
Okay. So I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, and that one's not.
May I ask, are you thinking all 3 on the Memorial Drive area, like Recreation Memorial Drive, or
Just
just
one.
one of those?
Yeah, just
That's-
one.
I was thinking, in my
Oh.
head, I was
Yeah,
thinking one of
yes.
those, not like all 3.
Sorry, yeah, no, I mean, I can make 5 or 6, but I think, these could be potential locations, just, choose one.
Yeah.
And they're pretty animal proof as far as
They are,
rodents and
they
stuff?
are,
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
do you monitor these on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I live right down the street, so I would be planning on coming out about twice a week, as well as have my contact information on the inside, in case anything was, in case someone was using the box and noticed that it was anything empty
I'm
and
not
needed
familiar
some
with
help.
Marshfield too much. Where's that?
That's right, that's the box right by, when you're going down the,
You get the
right
refreshment
down the
stand?
driveway, right, it's right next to the refreshment.
But that
There
would
used to
be-
be
Across
two
from the
outhouses.
marketplace.
But that would be a Rutland Little League.
Yeah, that's not gonna,
Okay.
Purview, it wouldn't be a,
No,
you'd have to go through Rutland Little League for that.
yeah.
Okay, so,
So really our only kind of before us is the recreation area on Memorial Drive, and that's those first three pictures under number one. One that's near the pool house, to your point, and then the parking lot or the annex parking lot with the Planet Aid box. My personal preference would be either one of the two parking lot areas, keep it a little bit farther away from the pool house, just because there's food and everything there as well, if there were anything. I'm not sure how wet I know that there was a lot of drainage work done on the hill from Memorial, coming down from the public safety and everything with the new catch basin, Austin, I'm not sure how wet that gets during heavy rain or thaws or anything like that. That's my only.
I'm just thinking, well, Memorial Field, with this time of year, it's insane when there's games going on, so it can't be anywhere where
kids and stuff.
kids and cars and, so I mean, out of these pictures, as far as Memorial, I think the one near the clothing drop would probably be the best. Because no one's parking on the grass there.
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be to put it there. Also, just from a security standpoint, it's the closest location to
Right,
the public safety facility, which has cameras.
right.
And, you know, one of our goals is to also increase the security there, so you'd have just better visibility. God forbid if something happens to it, it would be close and we could check the cameras and see if something happens, so. It's probably the best spot,
Yeah.
and you can pull right up to it.
Yep,
Okay, so that would be the most likely location.
you get the most visibility too, with the pool open, you'll have a ton of people there, they'll see
Absolutely.
it,
Yeah.
yeah.
How close is that? You know, again, I worry about animals and kids.
Yep.
You know, how close is that to the pool?
It's right next to the pool. Well, yeah, it's, you know, when you're pulling straight into the pool, there's a handicap parking, it's right there, right on the side of the,
It's like
on
at
the
the
side of
back.
the fence.
Yeah, the back side of the annex parking lot
Yeah.
as you get down closer to the pool.
Basketball court, when you're
Yeah.
pulling down,
Okay.
it's right there.
It also, of these photos, to the point of keeping it away from animals, is the furthest away from the woods.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's probably, I think that's the best spot.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah,
be-
that's kind of what I was leaning
Yeah.
towards, but
If it doesn't, yeah, I mean, if it doesn't work,
Yeah,
you find another spot.
yeah, absolutely.
Just have to make sure that DPW, I assume this will be year round. It's like snow removal, I just don't want them to push the snow up
Right.
against it and destroy all your hard work.
Even if they needed to access the drain for some reason, like, would that be a problem?
You're gonna be out of the way, right? They won't be on the parking lot, we'll be in the grass.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you're fine.
And I'm not familiar with Planet Aid. Planet Aid doesn't usually lift up their bins, right? They physically
No.
empty them, so it's not like a dumpster or something that we worry about a truck.
Okay, perfect.
I don't think. So that would just be my only other consideration as
Okay.
far as placement, but I personally like that area, so I would be happy to entertain a motion. If the board has any other questions, I don't wanna push
I
things.
have another
Sure.
question, and that is, it was mentioned that the town has its own insurance. But I think, and Austin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, every other operation we deal with, they basically have their own liability insurance, and we're on as kind of a secondary. Because where this is gonna be close to kids, that's another thing I would worry about. If getting bitten or having a problem, and I don't want the town facing that kind of liability and our rates going up because something happens.
Well, we're not putting any animals in there, right? So hopefully they don't get, we got bigger problems if they're getting bit, but it.
No, I mean animals showing up trying
Oh,
to
yeah,
get
yeah.
in here, and then the kids are there.
And Tamika, if you could help me on this, if there's any other arrangement that we have that I'm thinking of like permittees, we do have them do additional insured. What else?
So, we do the additional insured when they need liquor liability insurance, but essentially what the insurance company said is it's town property. And so you could just as easily have somebody walking their dog around the track that could potentially, bite one of the kids. So they said because it's town property, you can't stop people from going on town property. There's no increased liability to the town, different than any other type of activity.
Yeah, I'm not worrying about so much the insurance company paying out, they have their own big pot of money. I'm worrying about what the cost would be if there's a major issue to the town in terms of our costs going up. But I guess if something, so my question is there any way that they can assure us, that Gary, you can assure us that you will absorb some of that liability if a major issue happens?
So I think, so statutorily, municipalities are also, I think there's limits for our liability.
Yep.
Especially for that kind of liability that you're talking about, Harry.
Yeah.
I assume, and this is the worst case scenario, this won't happen, but if they exhaust the town's liability, I assume especially with lawyers involved, they would pursue any other venues to make their client whole. But if we're talking about the town's liability, we would be limited to the statutory limits that exist for municipalities.
And how much is that?
It depends on the occurrence, 100,000, million, whatever it is. It starts with a 1 and ends with a 0.
Yeah.
But it's not for.
And that's all liability, not just an incident, right?
Well, they're so there's like property liability, there's general liability, there's professional liability, so they each have separate limits. In this case, depending on what the injury is.
I think it's $100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it is.
Not very big, and that's covered, we just pay the deductible for that.
Okay, I guess, Kara, it'd be up to you to make sure these things are maintained and watched, because I would be worried if an incident happened and it hadn't been watched or taken care of, or something like that. Because, from my perspective, being honest, that would be a reason for me to have you pull them.
Oh,
Okay, so
absolutely.
that's why. Okay,
I would also be concerned a little bit about the lot next to Century Oil and the fact that St. Patrick's would be plowing snow there. And with the additional building on the Century Oil side, that will probably also change their method of snow removal, okay? So that might be something that might have to be considered.
Yeah, and I think if one does get installed in the field on Memorial, as we're talking about, I won't pursue the lot next to Century Oil.
Okay.
And I mean, our purview is really the lots on Memorial, so,
Yeah, it's up to the church if they.
right, it's up to the church and Little League or Little League if Kara wanted to go that route.
I mean, I haven't seen it on there, so when it's up, I'll take a look at it, but my main concern, as I stated last time, was on the common. It's not there, it's here, so easy access, and it doesn't kinda shout at you, okay, so.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the installation of an outdoor pet food pantry on town property at the back corner of the annex parking lot by the Planet Aid box as depicted in the picture. Working with DPW and town administrator to ensure that placement is
So
friendly.
moved. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second question?
Sorry.
No, that's okay, she was gonna ask that anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna ask for a question, so.
Do we need to do any kind of paperwork contract or anything like that for this, Austin?
For this one, I don't think so.
Because we can
Not for
easily
this
change our mind if we want to, and it's not.
Yeah, we're not making any changes, like this is a little bit different than the most recent board action with Hope Lives Here, where there's actual changes to the site, I mean,
Yeah.
they're not doing any
Okay.
site work or anything, they're just installing fixtures.
Okay, all right.
Be happy to plant flowers, but that would be the the extent.
Um,
So we have a
Was there
motion and a
second?
second, yep.
Okay.
So any other questions? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye?
Martin, aye.
Galvin, I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you
And
guys
so,
very much.
you
Yeah,
can
thank you.
work with Tamika and Austin to touch base with Chris to make sure location wise is good for plowing and any sort of maintenance, but otherwise I think you're good to go there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much
Thank you, thank you.
appreciated.
We'll look for it for donations.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night. Moving into new and special business, we have tree removal on town-owned property. Proposal, a discussion with RDIC. I think Mike was unable to make it tonight, but Michelle and Dick are here for RDIC.
And Tim is online.
Oh, okay, and Tim is online as well. I saw Tim online, I was wondering what for, so. So do you have some conversation?
Sure. So I guess Mike had sent some communication to Austin about this. That much of our discussion at our meeting, I believe it was in February, centered around cutting tree trees on 5 to 6 town-owned parcels. We had invited a very reputable forester who has done much work in the town and is very familiar with our parcels. We asked the forester to evaluate the parcels for the viability of cutting trees and generating revenue to the town. He has advised that the state provides grants for this type of project and he would apply for the grant. We would not proceed until the grant is in place because we don't have money to pay for it, but I think the understanding is that it would be a grant-funded project. This has the potential to generate revenue to the town with absolutely no out-of-pocket expense, as all costs would be covered by a portion of the revenue generated from the sale of the lumber. I don't think we would pursue it if I know that lumber prices fluctuate, we talked about this in the meeting, so I think if the lumber prices didn't cover the cost, it wouldn't be feasible to do. So it would have to be something where the lumber prices would be high enough to cover the cost. The RDIC believes this is consistent with the newly adopted charge of the RDIC, but wanted to keep the select board in the loop. And if you have any questions or concerns, there are 3 of us here.
I just wanna try to a little bit clarify this with the forester. I talked to him and Randy about this also. The particular area that we're talking about, number 1, I wanted everything cleaned out on 68, to open it up so people can see what's there. He suggested not. The only thing that had value to it is the piece of property up behind it, across the rail trail, up in the back, which could make some doggone big rec fields. And it was brought up to the forester to try to think about this, is what you get for money for harvesting the trees, to turn around and have a contract to dig all the stumps up, flatten it out into a field, and leave whatever has to be done, for Concom, because there is a zone A that runs through it. But there's plenty of room to have some recreation fields made up in the back there. With the money that, not at this particular time, like you said, the prices are pretty low at the moment. They were high earlier, but they've dropped. But he is anticipating it to come back up in good shape later. There might be some work to be done also at the heights, but the amount of trees that are there that would produce much money is not really there anymore because they were taken out earlier. And that's about it. He said the best thing to do with the property that is next to 68 is to take out the better trees and trim it down, open it up so at least you can see into the area that you're trying to, turn into a business or whatever. And because topographical, you do climb quite steep in one of the areas there. And plus, you can't forget about the MWRA's shaft. There's a 50-foot easement that goes up through there, so that can't be touched. And also with the cell tower is, that's gotta be off limits too.
So I think if I understand correctly, and Austin, I'm not sure if you have any additional insight, or Michelle, Dick, is that DCR offers some land forestry grants. I believe probably the earliest would be the next fiscal year, so July. I believe most of the grants are either the grant opportunity window has closed for this current fiscal year, the money has been spent out or whatever. I'm not 100% sure, I don't know. I guess part of my concern is making sure that we're following the procurement process and that we aren't kind of cutting our nose off to spite our face. Is that the saying? That we're realizing true money and not at just a few dollars here or there, as well as following procurement. I don't know, I had reached out to a couple commercial real estate agents, and I didn't get clear answers as far as if you're marketing land, undeveloped land, is it more preferred or less preferred to have it cut? Because I know some developers probably would want the wood and others might not care. And so I don't necessarily have an answer for that. But I just wanna make sure that by moving forward with this, we're following procurement and also not just trying to make a few dollars here or there, that there's going to be a realization in terms of dollar amount as well as marketability.
I think also like who is the forester? Can you say who the forester is?
Ross.
Ross who?
Yeah, you would have to say who.
But I'm saying, is he a
Well, he's-
citizen, is he a
Ross-
resident?
Ross Hubez. Hubez. Ross Hubez.
Ubeck.
Alright,
He's the forester?
Yeah, he's been around. He bought Kurt Leslie's business. He lives in North Brookfield. And we dealt with him before up at the Heights Hospital when we had the big operation up there. And he's been very good. And he told me this particular thing, if you got the okay to get going on it, it's gonna take anywhere from 6 months to a year before things could happen, you know, to line stuff up and the grants and all that. So there is time.
I don't know, we talked about this, a couple of years ago, probably when I first got on the board about clearing all the trees, Maple Ave.
Yeah. Like to
The
get
only
it.
thing that scares me about this is, I don't know a lot about building, but I know that if a developer wants the land, trees aren't gonna scare him away.
It'll be a plus for him.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be, I think, so I don't know, the town's, I mean, the land's not being marketed now, correct?
And at the moment, it's,
Well, why don't
if
we,
somebody came in and looking, you know,
how are they gonna know to come in? It's gotta be marketed. I
well,
think,
trust me, the people, if they're looking for a certain thing in a certain area, they'll know.
how do they know?
Because plenty of people
I've had
around here
this
know that
argument
about
with
the
Mike, I
town.
don't understand dragging our feet with this land over, it's the same discussion over and over. Market the property.
Yeah.
So that developers can come in. If we clear all that land to hook up, you know, a local builder, a forester or whatever, I'm sorry, I don't think that's, I appreciate the gentleman, you know, saying, oh, I'll cut all the trees, but that may be a negative, all
Well,
depending
then-
on what they want it with.
Then why don't you grab this next piece of property? How come you haven't done the old Rutland State Sanatorium and made a nice rec field up there?
I don't know what you're
Well,
talking about.
that's a different discussion.
Yeah, well, I
No, it's
think-
all the same thing, because you got
No, no, no.
forest land there too,
My
so,
question,
Go ahead.
my question is, we're talking about 68 primarily.
right?
How many acres are we talking about?
78?
78 acres. And is it flat land?
No.
Is it terraced land?
I would classify it as terrace, and then it levels off as you get across the rail trail, the 50-foot right-of-way that DCR owns all the way down through.
And where is this acreage of 73? Is it already laid out on a plot size? Do we, like, plot 72 or whatever, can I look at
You
it?
could, GIS, you know,
It's
go
the
on.
property at the town line where the cell phone tower is.
Yes.
It's that property, is that,
It's behind it.
yeah, but it's that area.
Yes, it
So,
is.
so you could access it off of 68?
Yes.
Yeah.
And does the access, what's there, whether it's watershed or whatever, does it provide a wide enough access for like a major business if we're talking 68 acres?
Right now, where the gateway is, if you wanted to get up to the rail trail, you can. Just pop open a gate and drive up.
But, I mean, what about a semi?
Well, that's how Capra Corporation hauled all the from across the road at the shaft. We hauled the stone, all the grindings. That's what we did on the rail trail.
Okay,
That's how it got up there.
so, okay. Okay, so if I'm understanding your financial aspect of it, you will be able to apply for a grant in order to cut down the trees and take out the stumps. And then with the lumber, you're gonna be getting money from the lumber, so you can use that to help develop the land,
Well, let's not say lumber, it's timber.
timber.
And the grant, I have no idea, this is grant thing that's beyond me. That could be to help the forester go out and mark the trees and then go out and try to find who's the best, logger to do this, will give the highest price. That's all gotta go out there and have to be done. And
guess
also, it all depends on how you line it up. I'm just saying, from experience, when I had all the acreage done below me, it was the best thing I ever did is I had it logged and then the money was turned around and dumped into the contractor to come in and make the fields. And at the end, thank God the contractor spent an extra few days pushing big boulders, but he.
I guess I agree with Tom. I guess I agree with Tom in some way that we paid the money, we had the trees cleared up here at the Heights, and that property's been sitting there for years now with nothing developing on it. So, yeah, by Mozio's, what's been developed there? Nothing. So.
Except the senior housing up
Well,
there.
that's a different piece.
No, that was all the same piece.
They own that too? Or does the town own it?
Not the lower part by Mosio's, he's saying.
If the first time when that logger was there, it was all one piece.
But what I'm saying is, the Heights, Harmony Homes bought their piece.
Yeah.
Now we have the piece on the left side of the entryway, and we have the piece on the right side.
Correct.
That was logged. But how many years ago was that done, and we have nothing developed there yet?
It was not logged, that was somebody else that came in that ground the trees up into, it was not logged.
I don't think it matters who logged it.
You know what I'm getting at,
Yeah,
Tom?
no, I do. There's been a reluctancy to market that property, and I just don't understand why. I just don't get it.
Well, congratulations, either do I, but it's one of the things that the town has to do is put an RFP out there.
But it's the RDIC that's responsible for doing that, so I don't understand, you say the town, but.
Town.
So the Heights property is RDIC. The town property on 68 is I think with the new charges set forth between RDIC and EDC. RDIC is encompassing all town-owned properties as far as the pieces for marketability and everything of that nature. And so that's why they're asking for this. As far as the pushing, I hear the concern with marketing the Heights property as well as these other properties. But I think that's another.
Well, I just don't wanna see us spend all the time and the money clearing it and then sit there for another
Right.
5 years or 6 years.
The only one that benefits is the logger.
Right,
Sorry, but.
right.
I see Tim has his hand up on Zoom. Tim, go ahead.
Okay, so let me get some clarity here. I'll first answer the question on the property next to Mozio's. The thought process of the RDIC was we get the senior housing developed, 144 houses way on their second or third phase started. There was thought process of next to Mozio's of potentially marketing that as a small business. I hate to use the word strip mall, but that's the best way to do it, where you've got something along that. So to get that marketed and started before you've got houses there, no business is going to come in if they don't have any revenue stream, which would be the houses. So that's a potential why we've been waiting on that for the houses to get in. And as we know, we've had National Grid issues, we've had power issues, we've had ZBA. So we're off to a little bit of a slow start, but I potentially see the Mozio property, if that's what we want to call it, of the RDIC, being marketed down the road once we get the senior housing in and we've got some access to revenue streams for potential businesses there. So that being said, the second portion I wanted to talk about is what Mike and Dick and Michelle and I were trying to get at is we were looking to get some, not so much to say that, we want to log this. We just want to get confirmation
that we can go down this path, so the individual, the logger, so to speak, doesn't spend all of his time putting together the grant documentation, everything he needs to do to get the monies to do the no-cost logging to the town from the grants. And that he gets all that put together and comes back and the select board and or the town administrator says no, and we've wasted 4 or 5 months of that. So that's what we're really here to ask is this something we want to start down the road? Secondarily, what I wanted to clarify is the monies, like Dick had said, from some of the logging would be put back into the general fund. So there's monies coming back to the town on this. You're right, it might not be a lot, but we don't know until we get the grant documentation put together. So what we're looking for is yes, we'll get support and we can start to process. And like Dick said, it's 6 months to a year like any grant. This isn't going to happen overnight. So, and I guess the third portion is I wanted to say the marketing is that anybody that has GIS that's in the business of buying property can easily go on and click on a card and see that it's a 61A, 61B, open property and buy it. So yes, but I mean, the town in the past, we haven't gone on a marketing spree for properties. So maybe that's something the RDIC and the EDC working together in the future will work out. But right now, there's been no discussion about moving forward with town property to market. But I do think that our planner, who's doing a phenomenal job, and Tamika's helping him with this, is this study and that we get out there will give us the opportunity to be able to market these by seeing what the feedback is from the residents and the surrounding communities. So I think that's going to enhance what we've sort of been talking about tonight. So thanks, that's it.
So I think I have a question, I think, is what you're asking for essentially that the board would be amenable to pursuing the logging through the grant administration process and basically to say, work with the town administrator to ensure that procurement law and grant processes are followed appropriately to see if the DCR funding is available to essentially self-fund potential logging on town-owned property so that then the town would realize essentially the majority of the revenue from the logging. Is that?
I think so. And part of it too is what Dick was saying. Some of that land I think looks like it would be good for recreation. And so even though it's not economic development, but is that something like you're asking, it's part of our charge in terms of taking a look at town-owned properties and how to develop it. Might not be developing it for sale, but developing it actually for recreation. And so if you want that, great. If you don't want that, that's fine. But that's what where do you want us to go with this? I think is the overarching question.
And I think for me personally, I am, given the survey that's out for the 68 kind of industrial commercial corridor and everything as well, I think that there's value to doing something with especially that property. And if that's the property that has the most beneficial wood to it, then that makes sense. But again, I just want to make sure that the processes are followed in a manner that is with procurement as well as with the best interest of town and not an individual.
Yeah.
And what?
And not a logger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 78 acres, 78, right? Is a decent piece of property. I mean, that's pretty big. Whether you bring in a commercial recreation developer to use it or whether you get a business in there, it's a good piece of property. I guess when I think about it is I can't conceptualize where a business would go or recreation would go. So if you have a plant that is a distribution plant, where would the recreation go on that? Because we don't want to turn, from my perspective, this town needs money. So unless we create a commercial recreation facility to give the town money instead of just, I mean, maybe we could put a couple of acres out there, 5 or 6 or something to help recreation. but we need business. So if we're gonna develop this, I'm looking for a return on the investment for the town, not just once, but annually in the reason of tax revenue. And I'm not getting a sense of how that's gonna work. So I don't know if you need the grant to do that, but from what I'm hearing, you want the grant to clear the land. But I'm looking for some type of preconceptual layout of what you actually see that you can go out and sell to the community once it is cleared. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Yeah, and did I?
Yeah, I just,
And I think, I mean, I see it as, I think that that's valid for sure, but I think also in order to, I think they have, the RDIC has also made the point, especially on this particular parcel, that it is pretty heavily wooded. There hasn't been any clearing done on it in a long time. And so to even be able to get a better idea of topography and the wetlands and everything, to have it cleared at the benefit of the town and not an individual, to then be able to continue to move forward. We will then, by that point, have the survey results as well as, this board had the recreation piece as a goal and objective for kind of marketing and seeing it as a potential avenue for additional revenue, whether it's town supported or private public partnership. But I think they're asking to be able to do the clearing so that they can better understand what's there because it's so thick and terraced.
I hear you, I guess, but I say if we go GIS, there are many levels of GIS. So somebody can look at the topography, they can look at the forestry on it, they can look at the slope lines, they can look at, am I wrong in saying that's available to them?
Topography used to be on the GIS, but I couldn't find it anymore on there.
And I know even
I'm
though,
looking at it now.
With topography?
Yes.
Good, okay, good.
Right, so if somebody's interested,
Yeah.
why can't they go on there and look at that? And I understand to clear it, but I come back to, what is your perception of what you're gonna use the land? If we're building house lots, they have to come to the planning board and say, here's our layout, here's what we want, and we'll say, okay. I think as a responsibility of our board, we have to do the same thing and say, okay, we're gonna get you your money, we're gonna okay it, but we'd like to know what your idea is for developing this. How are you gonna market it? Or is it gonna sit there for another 10 years? That's what I'm looking for.
Until you log it, how are you gonna know what it's gonna be, or how are you gonna, the little stream that runs down through there, that's zone A? Until things get done, you can't jump to the last phase until you're finished with the first phase to give you a good hard look at the thing. How are you gonna do it?
I'm not asking for the last phase, I'm looking
Yeah,
at
you are.
a
You're looking for
perception,
more.
no, I'm not.
But I
I'm
think-
saying, we got 78 acres, how many acres of that do you wanna put for recreation? You've got Concom here, you've got RDIC here, you've got all our committees in town
Yeah.
that can help you make a decision. I don't understand what's so hard about
but
that.
I think they
Yeah,
just
what-
said if I may, I think that they said recreation as a potential, not as their definite go-to. And this isn't gonna cost, the logging of this, they're not looking for any allocation of funding to be able to log this. They're looking for support in obtaining grants to fund the potential logging, given the cost of the timber and everything. So I don't think that I think in the past, when RDIC had come and asked for dollar amounts to do the logging, that's been a little bit of a harder conversation but this could be self-funding, reap some money for the town, and then also provide a better marketing pamphlet for whatever, whether it's recreation or commercial or industrial or whatever, is kind of how I see it. But like I said, my biggest concern is making sure that procurement, that the process is followed.
I mean, as far as this land, 68 is concerned, everyone knows I'd love to build fields. I've been saying it for 3 years, I'd love to. Town doesn't have the money for that right now. So unless there's grants that say we can build something or add to something, then we clear the land. We know what the land is. I don't see this, with all due respect, I know you guys are trying to, move this, but I don't see anybody that benefits except the logger. I don't Cause the developer's gonna look at it, he's gonna look at elevations, the moisture or drainage in the property, he's gonna look at acreage, he's gonna look at accessibility. He doesn't care about trees, I mean, developers clear trees all the time.
No doubt about it.
So I don't, again, I think the only one that benefits is the logger, and I don't understand how that helps the town, I just don't.
Through the chair, how it helps is A, forest management, which this town has none of at this point. That's what we're doing with this logger. Secondly, it gets property cleared so somebody can come in and, like Harry had said earlier, it gets a vision. I'm confused of waiting to the last minute to do this. We're trying to be proactive. We're trying to get, it's 6 to 12 months. These grants are not going to happen overnight. As anybody knows, Austin knows, when you put a grant out, it's a while to do this. So we're trying to get ahead of the game. Waiting to we potentially have a buyer to do this is not going to help anybody in this town. So, and as for what helps the logger out, I think we've said multiple times that there's revenue coming back from the timber that's in there, and that would be going to the general fund. So I'm confused why the logger seems to be keep said that they're the only one getting money here. The logger is actually getting the grant money that is paid for through a state grant or federal grant or such. It's not getting the town. He's not getting free money from anybody, from taxpayers. This is all considered grant money. And he's not taking anything from Rutland. In fact, he's helping putting money back into Rutland. So I'm confused why I agree with Leah. I really do. We've got to follow the procurement. That is number one. But I don't see why this is a bad thing for the town. And that's what we don't want to go through, is get him to go down through the whole process of putting the grant together, doing all the work, and then we come back to the board and they say no, because that's a waste of everybody's time. So that's why we're trying to get a feel of is this the time to do it? Do you want to do it? Or and as for the marketing, I got to say, I think, and Leah, you could tell me if I'm wrong, the division is the RDIC is the managing the property, the EDC is the marketing force of this. So the RDIC is really not the one going out there and marketing properties. Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought that was the division and the charge between the two groups, correct?
Well, Tim, if that's the case, then maybe we should be talking to the EDC to find out what their game plan is for that property.
So I think if I can just rope back, I think we can get stuck on the visions of the properties forever. And I think right now, one of the questions, the biggest question, and Tim, you touched on it, is responsible forest management. And we've had how many brush fires in the prison camps and the state park over the past couple years, because you could maybe argue that they haven't been maintained, there hasn't been appropriate forest management in there. This is an opportunity that at no expense to the town could reap some money and have responsible forest management, as well as create an opportunity for marketing of whatever that is. And I think we get stuck on, we have to have a vision to market it before we do the work, but in some ways, this is laying the groundwork. It doesn't have to be putting the cart before the horse. This is some responsible management, as well as then working on the marketing piece. And we have the survey data that's coming in. I believe the survey is closing May 10th, Tamika, or May 12th?
May 12th.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll have some of that survey data also from planning board, and that will go, I assume, with RDIC and EDC also, because it's kind of all encompassing for the potential economic development of the 68 corridor.
Through the chair. Michelle, what's the drop date for when you can start applying for grants?
For,
Doing this.
I don't think there is a drop date.
So you could apply tomorrow for this.
Oh, in terms of the forester's grant, I'm not really sure. Like, do you know?
No, I don't.
Maybe Tim would know? I don't think he said.
It's not so much, Harry, that I mean, applying for it, he's got so much legwork to do. He's got a couple months of work of getting documentation, getting everything put together, getting the paperwork. So, if I had to shoot from the hip, I would say if we gave him the go today, he probably would maybe have a grant put together in 3 to 4 months and then ready to go. So it would be in next fiscal year.
I don't think that was Harry's question. I think Harry's question was, does it have to be now, or like, how long is this grant open for? I think that's your
Yeah,
question.
in other words, this is the first time this has really come before us. And I'm the type of individual that likes to do my research and know more. I like to ask more questions. I don't want to come here and then say, okay, yes or no. I want to be able to evaluate it and do a job for the town that they're expecting me to do. So my question, you're right, Michelle, was, well, if the grant expires
Right.
in 9 months, well, then maybe we gotta rush our decision a little bit. But if the grant doesn't expire, then what's the rush without giving us an opportunity to look harder at it? That was my question. Thank you.
That's what I thought, okay.
Austin, do you have any insight into the DCR forestry management funding piece of it?
No, as you guys were talking, I was trying to look it up real quick, but you spoke too quickly.
Sorry.
But for some reason, so this discussion occurred, I think, while we were having a special town meeting or some other meeting. I wanna say, and I could be totally wrong, so please don't put this in the minutes. I wanna say it potentially was a rolling grant application. There's some state programs that are rolling, but I could be very wrong on that, as a lot of them aren't. But just looking quickly, there's an intent to apply, and then there's a whole documentation that I think is what Tim was talking about, for, how long it takes. It looks like there's extensive detail that you have to provide, for grants from $1,000 to $40,000, so. But I couldn't see the timeline quickly here when I was looking at it.
My very cursory understanding, and again, I don't know for sure, is that it's kind of similar to some of the DLT grants and everything, that there's a pot of money. Maybe it's not DLTs, but it's a pot of money, and once the applications are in and the money is expended, it's expended for the fiscal year, and it kind of renews every fiscal year. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, but
I just at the very bottom of this, sorry, Leah, so the intent to apply is due on or before October 1st, and full grant proposals are due on or before November 1st.
Okay, so we have a little bit of time before we can do an intent to grant.
But it sounds like yes, and that there is some months worth of work pre-work to do in order to even do the intent, so.
It's only April. And
Yeah.
again, the planning board doesn't go out and do anything without doing exhaustive information gathering investigation. Isn't that right, Tim? You just don't come in and say one night, it's a done deal, let's do it, right?
No,
From
no,
the
no, no,
planning board.
and that's why, and I apologize, but, and Dick and Michelle can maybe help me on this, but I thought we brought this before previous select boards in the past, but it just hadn't gone anywhere because we were looking for monies to do it with this same type of logger. But in this case, when Ross came before us, he'd actually found grant money that we wouldn't have to use any of the town's money, we could use grant money. So this was sort of a variation that we brought before the town previously. Is that correct?
Correct. I remember, Austin, you can correct me, I remember there was a request made for about $40,000 to do to the land at the hospital, but nothing to this extent involving 68, which is a much bigger issue.
Because before we were focused on only Rutland Heights, and then our charge got brought into townwide, and that's why we're looking townwide rather than solely focusing on Rutland Heights.
And Tim and Dick and Michelle, I think it's great that you guys are taking a step towards getting some property in town moving forward. I just, for one on the board, would like to have a little bit more time to investigate and look at this before I would say yes on a grant.
Okay.
Even on a grant.
I'm good with that. Could, I guess if Harry, if through Leah, you guys can come up with what you're looking for, we can, I mean, needless to say on the next meeting, and Dick, I might be overcommitting, but if need be, we could have Ross come in, or you could come to one of our meetings. Well, we got one this week, actually. It's going to be too late for that. To have him do a better explanation, because we're second partying it right now, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah,
He's our expert.
I mean, for one, you let me know when your meeting is to discuss this stuff again, and I'll certainly try to be there.
I was very frustrated the time that we had John, the town planner, brought in, what the heck was it? Began with an R. They wanted a rugby for the Heights. And to walk over there and ask him, well, where would you have, where's the area? You know, well, let's walk through the weeds and everything else over there, and tried to show him. And to me, that was so frustrating. And I mean, I mowed it when Margaret was town administrator. I mowed that whole place up there, and I say, to see this thing gone back again like this is ridiculous when you're trying to sell the idea and you can't even see, 500 feet down the road here or whatever. The town has got to get their act together, for Christ's sakes. If you want to start getting things, start spending a little bit of money in opening up this area so the people can see it, so we can try to get more people involved in it.
And I think this was a way to do it without the town spending money, is the point.
Right,
All right.
so it sounds,
Go ahead.
well, no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna make a motion, so if you got something to say.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like the board's not totally against it, but has some more questions. And would like some more clarification on the grant process and what that looks like and as well as beyond that, the procurement side of anything as well. Is that a fair
That was gonna
assessment?
be my motion, to table it for more investigation.
Right, and I wasn't gonna take a motion, I was just gonna, I mean, we had it as a discussion piece with our DIC.
Okay.
And if we have the dates of October, I would hope to give anybody that's working on the grant plenty of time, and especially kind of nice weather, spring and summer weather, to get in there to do whatever work needs to be done for the grant preparation, that it sounds like the intent is due by the end of October, right, Austin?
Yeah, so my recommendation before, because I really am hesitant to engage someone before following proper procurement on this, so I think that we should do that first, to be honest. So, maybe perhaps working closely with RDIC on developing a scope of work, because I also heard some other actions that aren't within just totally logging, so we're gonna be really careful about asking a contractor to do other things that aren't just within that scope of work, like land clearing, things like that. We're gonna be very careful, because that's a totally different subsector that we're gonna be careful just when we're going out to procurement. Or if we're gonna do it, put it all in the scope so it's very clear, right? So maybe we do that sooner.
Yep.
And we could put some very explicit language, as is, in most of our bid documents, is the town reserves the right to, essentially pull out of this bidding process. We could put something that says that this relationship is also contingent upon a successful grant application. If we do not receive the grant, this contract is null and void, things like that would protect the town, so all of a sudden we're just not on the hook for paying someone, don't get a grant, so. And then, maybe just what would be helpful in speaking with Ross, for example, is we're gonna have to do some estimating on price thresholds. Once we get over a certain dollar threshold, we have to be really careful about this procurement, so if we're gonna make tens of thousands of dollars, that's totally different than making, $5,000 or something off of clearing a small piece of land, so.
And I think also just being mindful as to thresholds as far as what the market is looking like. I think for a while, timber market was quite high, and now I think with the tariffs and everything, it's tanked and it may come back up, but kind of where is that threshold interest as well?
Yeah,
For
we
how
can,
long?
I can look at lumber future prices for sure, to see when or what the high pikes might be, to get something.
But
And maybe start it before that, before the lumber's harvested, to get to those prices, is what I'm saying, which usually is months ahead, and something like that.
Going back a ways, there was a group that came forward that looked at the Heights property, and on the right side of the road as you go into it, it's just a level flat area. And they said, what's wrong with putting a senior center there? Because you're gonna have senior housing up on the hill, so there'd be an ideal place for a senior center. And all of the utilities are there, electric, water, sewer, it's all present on that particular plot of land. So, you know, but since then, the interest has waned, obviously, because nobody seems to be doing anything with it at all, so at this particular point in time, that idea is, as far as I'm concerned, still afloat. However, some of the time, you would probably be required to get other people involved in it again.
So is the board comfortable with just postponing, or do we want to authorize the town administrator to work, specifically make a motion to authorize the town administrator to work with RDIC to develop a detailed scope of work and procurement process for any potential logging that may happen on town land? I think that to me, that makes the most sense, is to kind of directly push town administrator and RDIC to work together to ensure that process is being followed. That doesn't say that it's going to happen, it's just laying out the scope of work and what the process may look like.
So I also brought up a long time ago about Putnam Park, because that place has not been utilized to its fullest, in my opinion. And I talked to the forester about it, and he says, yes, you're right, the pine trees are getting beyond where they're gonna be any value, they're gonna start, dying in there, so if you were gonna try to bring your Putnam Park, now's the time to get going on that one too.
So, Madam Chair, you're suggesting that we make no motion today or any type of discussion on it, except for to allow Austin to work with them to try to come up with some type of a plan?
Yep, a scope of work and to ensure procurement is
work.
followed. Austin, is that, and I would say the town administrator, authorize the town administrator to work with RDIC to create a scope of work and.
So, if I might, through the chair, Tim, Dick, and Michelle, is that kind of the stuff you're looking for from the board tonight to kind of start the step going forward?
Get
Yeah.
it cranking.
Yes.
Yeah, and Austin, you're more than welcome. I think Tamika's got the schedule. Thursday, we're having a meeting.
Great.
And we could potentially have another meeting if there's another time that's better for you. Like, it doesn't have, we could, I don't think we're stuck with just that one meeting a month, right? If we needed to schedule a second meeting, that's more amenable to you, Austin, I think we could do that.
Okay.
So is there a motion to authorize the town administrator to work with RDIC for a scope of work and grant process and procurement liabilities for the town-owned land potential logging opportunities?
Are we talking both pieces of property or just 68?
To me personally, it's all the town-owned
Yeah, I think the
land.
best way maybe is to make it generic, just so we get a rate,
Get another one.
and then the town reserves the right to select a through RDIC, well, the town through RDIC has the right to determine which locations are appropriate.
Okay. Was that a motion?
I need someone to move it.
I'll move the motion.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Is there any other conversation?
Do we need to clarify town administrator or interim town administrator?
It would just be, I believe it would just be town administrator, that position, whomever is there. Any other questions? Roll call, Harry,
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, I.
Galvin, I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
very much.
We have next one-day liquor license applications for Seven Saws Brewing for July 3rd and Dolce Vita for summer concerts. I believe, did the summer concerts come through the events committee?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, Tamika answered yes. I said, did the summer concerts from Dolce Vita come through the events committee?
Yes, you guys assign them their dates.
Yeah.
We assign dates, but that's someone else that does that.
Yeah, no, but I just wanted to make sure that it was, that you were aware, that the events committee was aware of them. And then July 3rd, was that through
That's through the fire brigade.
the fire brigade? And are they, I see that they have for the name of event Rutland Fireworks, are they aware of that? I assume that they're aware of that potential,
Yes.
um,
Actually, I shouldn't say yes. I don't know
Okay.
if they are.
okay,
It's my understanding that they have not worked with the Fourth of July committee. They've only spoken with the fire brigade. I personally have not communicated anything with them about the potential for fireworks, so I don't know if they know that.
okay. My, and this is just my very kind of rough understanding, was that there was still plans to do something on the third, whether it was gonna include fireworks or not is to be determined, obviously, so, yeah. We have the applications and we have, everything that is required. Both are just for wine and malt only. Dolce Vita is a town resident, application, so that is the, in-town vendor fee, and obviously Seven Saws is out of town, that's the, out of town fee. So the dates for, Dolce Vita, I would entertain a motion to approve the, one-day liquor licenses, for Dolce Vita as presented for 6/27, 7/25, and 8/8 for the concerts on the Common.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Any other conversation?
Question, that $60 is per event, so we would be collecting $180,
That is
correct?
correct. Yep, they've paid 180.
And how do they pay that? Do they pay it all at once or as event occurs?
No, so they have already paid it at the time of application.
All
So they
three.
happen to pay it through our online portal with the permitting system.
Okay,
Yep, so it's all prepaid before I bring it.
okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second, any other questions? This is for Dolce Vita, roll call, Harry,
Second, aye?
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. And then we have the application for the, July third, for Seven Saws, as presented. I will entertain a motion to approve the one-day liquor license for Seven Saws Brewing on July third, from 3 to 11 p.m. behind the fire station as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Any conversation? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye?
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Moving on, we have the Wachusett Regional School District Maintenance Agreement. This, Austin, I will let you speak to it, but it's essentially a one-year agreement as, we are up for, a new agreement, next year, I believe.
Yes, the school district is respectfully asking the select board to approve this one-year maintenance agreement. This is a standard agreement that, no principal changes to the agreement other than the term. So we're currently off of a 3-year agreement. And the price, so this fee that you see, which is $27,447.84 per school, is approximately a 2% increase from the previous lease agreement. The reason for the one-year term is, as the chair mentioned, to align with our lease agreement, which expires June 30th of next year. The thought from the school district and the town administrators was it's a good opportunity for the town and the school district to negotiate these at the same time. We're talking about, for example, the $35,000 threshold that's in the lease agreement, things like that, that details that maybe it makes sense to just do this all at once. So the thought was, and the request is just to ask for a one-year agreement, no principal changes other than the dollar value. And the town and the district can start those negotiations. I think we had mentioned probably in the fall to make sure that, especially for the lease agreement, if it's another long-term lease, we're gonna have to bring that to town meeting. So getting everything, squared away well in advance of town meeting, so that can be approved next annual town meeting for the lease agreement. And then this is also as a part of that as well, so. But again, no principal changes. This just covers the maintenance, plowing, sanding, sweeping of town school facilities, parking lots, and athletic fields.
So it's Naquag, Glenwood, and Central Tree, because they're the Rutland specific schools, and Wachusett Regional School District is paying Rutland per school, so I believe the total is $82,343.52 for maintenance of the 3 schools for 1 year.
Twice a year, so we bill them, the treasurer collector's office bills, sends an invoice to the district and, we get paid.
Through the chair, Madam Chair. Wachusett hit itself for a 7% increase, and they're giving us 2. Was that something they said, this is what we're gonna do? Or
Well,
was that-
just remember, if they increase that, your school assessment goes up. This is essentially a reimbursement, because this is paid through their budget. So, I was to be honest, I was surprised that they increased it at all. Especially because the principal, we're gonna renegotiate this whole thing very shortly.
Okay,
But they pay this directly through their budget, which obviously we fund their budget, so it's kind of a refund, I guess, if you will.
now this maintenance agreement, is that part of the $75,000 that we've set up for the maintenance that we're putting before the town?
Yeah, so it's funny, cause that $75,000 was a couple years ago now, and now it's, as the chair mentioned, about 82,000 with this new term. But yes, that would be the principle, is the reimbursement would go into that school maintenance fund, so we can
Okay,
use that for.
but just the 75? We didn't make any arrangements for inflation or adjustments or anything,
Well,
right?
so, and we didn't set a dollar value at all for that school maintenance fund, right, so I think.
We don't have any funding mechanism for that currently.
And that would be a policy I would encourage the select board to set, very similar to your other funding mechanisms for your other reserves. Whether you do, I don't know, again, maybe 5% of free cash or whatever, and you transfer that in at annual or special town meeting, so.
Okay, so that would be going forward, because we've already we're asking for the approval of that fund
Yes,
at the meeting, but we're not funding it, so we don't know what that amount's gonna be.
correct, yeah.
To do that, okay. Okay,
Does anyone have any other questions with regards to this agreement? I would entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 WRSD school maintenance agreement as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye?
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin aye?
Whitman, aye. Thank you. We have the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition, a 3-year intermunicipal agreement. We currently are in an IMA for stormwater. This is just a renegotiated 3-year contract, correct, Austin?
Yeah, so the most recent action that was taken by the select board was to approve a modified intermunicipal agreement. The previous lead party for the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition was the town of Spencer. That was transferred to be the town of Shrewsbury, so what you guys approved last year was just the new IMA with Shrewsbury. That IMA is now expired, so it needs to be renewed. The proposed term is from FY '26 to FY '30. No change in the annual assessment or contribution from Rutland. It's still gonna be $4,000 a year to allow us to have membership and access to the services provided by the coalition. So just renewing the existing IMA.
Is there, go ahead.
Now, is this it's a multi-year renewal contract, okay?
Yep.
4,000 set for the 3 years, no inflation or any adjustment?
Yep.
How much did that go from the last 3 years?
It's been 4,000 from, I think, the beginning, yeah.
I had somebody ask me, what does that 4,000 mean? What, when we spend it on them, what's it for?
Yeah, I mean, so it gets us, it's access to the program, right? So it's technical assistance opportunities, attendance of the meetings, access to some of the services that they provide. So for example, with this pot of money, $4,000 that's collected from all of these communities, they purchase some GIS equipment. that can be loaned to each of the member communities. So there's different things like that, and also they assist with annual reporting, technical assistance, educational resources, promotion, things like that. So, you know, we're paying for the privilege of access to those services.
Follow-up question?
Yep.
Does, do we have staff, town staff that goes to these meetings that they educate on and they pay for?
So I've attended the meetings, Director Kolosky has attended the meetings, and I believe he sent one of his employees to also attend one of the trainings.
And this is strictly stormwater?
Correct.
Okay. Do they help us with any capital investments, like, you know, they have, well, I've got this one, if you need one, you can buy it from us. Do they have anything like that?
No, other than, as I mentioned, they purchased some of the, like the GIS equipment and, you know, surveying equipment, things like that, so. But, you know, that's not our asset, right? It's the asset of the coalition. It's technically the asset of the lead community, so the town of Shrewsbury, and it's loaned out to a community that requests it.
And they can loan that out?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I think we used it, I think I saw a correspondence, I think Joe Buckley used it for something years ago.
Okay.
Any other questions for the IMA? I would entertain a motion to approve the 3-year intermunicipal agreement with the Central Massachusetts Stormwater Coalition as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Moving into the town administrator transition, discussion of the upcoming process. As we know, Austin is moving to Sutton. Congratulations. And what that transition looks like. We had some executive session discussion. This, I believe, is our first actual full open session discussion. And how that looks. Austin had posted on the MMA website for an interim. Generally, in the past, when this has happened, the board has asked the town administrator to bring forward a candidate. Margaret had brought forth Bob Reed. Mike Nicholson had brought forth Nick Monaco as interims, and then the board had brought forth Gary after Ron's departure. So I wanted to, I find value in having a interim town administrator for sure, and wanted to see what the board's kind of interest in that process is. I very much am of the mindset of have Austin bring forward a qualified candidate, what that qualified candidate looks like. We can have that discussion. For me, I think one of the big things is a CPO. I don't believe we have a CPO in town other than Austin. I know in the past our DPW director was a CPO as well. But I think knowing we have some big projects coming potentially down the line in the next few months.
Chief, you'd look good in a tie.
I guess, is the board comfortable with Austin providing a candidate? For an interim, generally interims are not benefited. Austin, you can speak a little bit more to the interim process, but they're generally not benefited. It's a set number of hours per week or.
Yeah, I mean, it's typically more of just kind of like a contracted employee, so you're not, you know, as you mentioned, not providing any benefits, so no vacation time, health insurance, things like that. Usually for a set term, so in the job advertisement that I put out, I think I said, you know, estimated 3 to 6 months. Obviously, if the board needs to modify that upon mutual agreement with the candidate, you can certainly do so. I can say that, you know, since advertising on the 16th, I think it was, we have received 9 applications from people of various skill sets and experiences, some very experienced, former town managers, town administrators, some, newer folks in the field, some folks that aren't in the field at all. So you've got, there's some diversity there and opportunities for, I think, a good interim, so.
This is board conversation, so
Through the chair. Austin, you probably know more about this than most of us on the board here. But would you say that we should look at maybe 2 or 3? Would that be of any value for this town of what we're looking for? Or do you think you've got a pretty good handle on the one that you think would fit this town more since you've been here now?
I've certainly, I think that's obviously why you're here to discuss what you prefer, right? If you wanna have an opportunity to, have a chat with 2 or 3, I could certainly do that, and I'd be happy to weed down to some folks that I think would be, able to do the job on day one and come right in to be an interim. But if you, want me to narrow it down to one, that's also occurred here and has occurred in other communities as well. And, there's my review of the applicants, there's, definitely several individuals that could be that one person, if that's what the board's direction was, so.
Okay.
It's also gonna come, to be honest, I haven't, for, a good purpose, I have only acknowledged receipt of their application. I haven't had any, deep discussions with any of them about serving, so we'll have to have those discussions about what their availability is, what their timeline is, informing about our timeline, things like that, so.
So would it be advantageous for us to say, take the top 20%, 9, so it'd be like 2 people? Who have the best, or in your opinion would be the best, and just look at those and then give you and say, here's what we'd like to see, here's the one we'd like to call, or something like that. I'm new to this process, so, so that's why I'm asking.
So you could certainly do that. That would probably occur in an executive session sort of format, to review individuals. Not recalling some of the details of everyone's resume, I'd hate to just, call out someone who may be actively employed right now, but
And the initial would just be the board in executive session discussing those before we make an official, tell you to talk to
so
somebody.
what I really would just stress is I would encourage the board not to make a whole process out of an interim
Okay,
appointment. You should spend a lot of your time and resources on discussing the process for the next permanent administrator, right? Cause that's you've got some big questions there, to talk about, or big discussions there.
can you give?
Interims are usually the non-controversial ones, right, typically, right? They're the ones that, you appoint, they're gonna come in, they're gonna help the board through your permanent search process. They're experienced, they'll come right in, they'll have and they, very quickly develop an idea of where we are on, budget. You got a new fiscal year starting, so you're closing 1 year, starting another year. I will make sure that that individual has all the information about active projects, so, what we just talked about, they'll, have a kind of a status memo from me about, where things stand and what needs to take place next, so, they'll be, I think, as successful as possible as long as it's very clear about what the
And that's what you mean by
what
the
expectations
process?
are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a follow-up, I think I've mentioned that I think the board and the town as a whole needs to do some conflict resolution work and everything, so that's something I've been working with Austin to try to get names of individuals still. One of the ones that we had reached out is not taking new clients until the fall or winter at the earliest. I think Austin had just heard back from another one. I have the name of another one. So to try to continue that work, but I think that would be some of the work that an interim would also facilitate, the conflict resolution and just streamlining our kind of boards and commissions and employee relationships and everything.
Would it be helpful for the board to know the people under the consideration?
That's a question for you to answer.
So I think for me personally, one of the big, and I don't know the process, if we don't have someone who's a CPO, certified procurement officer, chief procurement officer, I don't know what that process looks like because I don't think that anyone in town is a CPO. I know in the past when we had a transition like this, we did have a kind of a backup CPO. So that's one of my questions, is knowing that we just had the conversations with RDIC, that there's some other things in the works as well, ensuring that the CPO process is, I personally don't necessarily need to know names of individuals, and feel that in the past, having the town administrator, the outgoing town administrator on good terms, provide a candidate has worked well to keep town moving, afloat. They're not coming in to kind of create a whole lot or do a whole lot of change, unless that's what we kind of work through as a board.
I mean, I would certainly trust Austin. He knows the ins and outs and what's running the town right now.
I mean, I agree, but I think, personally, as a board, we have a due diligence to the town, not to accept just one name, so. that's
Yeah, a
what I'm
couple
saying.
names is good,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
I'd prefer
I
to see
agree.
what the experience is in addition to the CPO, Leah. I think somebody that has HR experience, even in the interim, would be a big benefit, just to help with that transition as well, so. I would like to see a couple of names to review.
Yeah.
So Austin, it sounds like at least CPO and HR, kind of,
Okay, so you can kind of narrow, are you requiring the individual to have prior human resource director experience? Cause
No, not necessarily that, but just experience. I mean, we
Yeah.
know with,
so
things
first,
within the
maybe,
personnel, just handling personnel issues and just being able to.
so are you looking for current or prior town managers or administrators then?
For me personally, yes, because
Cause that does weed out a couple people, I'm asking for a specific reason, 'cause
I
there's a
think,
couple
and
applicants.
I don't know if this is too early to say, but for me, like, I think we need somebody that has a pretty good background and prior experience, town administrator, town manager.
Would it be inappropriate to ask for somebody who has well-rounded experience? For example, they've handled some larger towns, they've handled some smaller towns, so they have a grasp on the overall aspect of town management.
so I just,
So you're gonna get, especially with interim candidates, you just think about, most of these candidates are retired or maybe retiring town managers or administrators, especially the ones that are retired. This is kind of what they do, right? They can't work over a certain amount of hours, especially in a year. They are here to serve for 3 to 6 months, so they're gonna have the experience. Most of the ones that are retired, they've been around. They've been in larger communities, smaller communities.
Okay.
Maybe they've been in Rutland. No, actually, no, none of them have. But so yeah, most, if not all of them, are gonna have the prior experience, especially, and definitely the ones that have been seasoned town managers. They've been in the business for a while, so they've got plenty of experience on the HR front.
and I just wanna reiterate, for me, very much an interim is a defined shorter amount of time. So I like the 3 to 6 months, obviously, if it needs to be pushed out a little bit longer, because the process is moving, but we're not at that. The process has been moved and is moving, but we're not quite done at the 6 months, and it's an amenable extension to continue. But to me, it's a defined interim is a defined interim, to come in and kind of help the board find a full-time settled interim.
So how many do you want? Just to be clear.
I'm just kind of looking at the whole situation here and having borne witness to all the town administrators that have come through this town so far, I can honestly say that, you know, all right, we're looking for somebody who's got some experience, has some knowledge of what they're doing, what their know-how is, and, you know, what their background is as well. So that would come along with their experience, but, you know, okay, so they, you know, I think that, you know, they should have some serious experience in town management, or at least being a part of a town managing system.
My gut feeling is, I guess, two. That's my gut feeling. I don't wanna, I'm not here to, I'm not here to question them on their basics. They already got that. I'm not here to know them, because they're gonna be temporary. I'm here to look at their qualifications and how they fit. So I don't think 3 would, I don't know, maybe somebody would disagree with me. I think 2 should be good. That's my feeling.
Do you have, I'm sorry, does anyone else?
I would agree, 2 or 3, I think would be fine. Do we have a timeline for when we're looking to have an interim?
So that was gonna be my next question, is if the board wanted to do this with looking at 2 or 2 applicants, obviously we would need to see the applicant's availability and schedule an executive session. Ideally, the interim would be in place kind of as Austin is transitioning out. If not, then we would, Austin would probably name an acting for a week or 2 until the interim could start. I think, Austin, that's generally the process, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody, we have our next, we obviously have town meeting, which we wouldn't do anything at. We have in the past had executive sessions before town meeting, but I wouldn't recommend that. We could do it at the meeting following town election, or if the candidates are available and the board is available for an executive session next week sometime, we could do that as well.
I guess my feeling is if the board does change one way or another, it should be the next board's decision to work.
Well, the board is changing.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right.
There's no if.
No, you're right,
The board's
Tom.
changing.
I guess I'm trying to be polite, you know, the board's changing. And I just think it should be the decision of the next board to follow through. So we could have an executive session if that's where it takes on the next meeting. After the
13th?
13th.
Okay.
I mean, we gotta get moving on it, but I'm thinking that's,
Do we have again, an acting in the interim for?
So that would be something that, because I'm not officially leaving the employment until mid-June, so I will notify the board of my intention to appoint an acting. Very similar to like when I went on my honeymoon, right? Thank you. So I'll formally let the board and the town clerk's office know of that delegation. And then just one more question for you, because it did come up in one of the emails from one of the candidates. If, and I recognize that, you know, this is also, sorry, Tom, probably a future board decision, but do you have any preference on if the individual may also be interested in the full-time position? There's some communities that say that they don't want to entertain anyone who is interested in the full-time position. It does come up, so I just wanna put it out there and see if you have any thoughts.
my question would be, what's the benefit or the downside?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just tell you what my recommendation is. You know, ultimately, if you say yes, you should make the candidate apply like all the other candidates and go through the interviews.
After the temporary?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, you know, throughout the process. Now, you may have to tweak a little bit how you have the interim assisting with potentially, you know, if you're going with a search firm, things like that. You know, maybe you delegate that responsibility to someone else, so there's not any appearance of a conflict there. Or if you truly do work with a consultant, they take care of everything, right? So you don't have to worry about the interim being involved in that and receiving applications, for example. But it is a question, but you know, they should be treated no different than any other potential candidate that would apply for that position. But, you know, ultimately, there are some candidates that aren't interested, and so it may not matter at all. But it was asked, so I just wanted to see what your thoughts were.
I think for me personally, I will defer to the rest of the board, but I think if generally for me, an interim is an interim and set for a certain amount of time and to come in and assist the town in maintaining its status and working through the process. I think Austin alluded to the fact that there can be some tricky pieces if it's a candidate that's also applying for the full-time position. If the candidate wanted to apply, I think they would still have to go through the whole process. So I'd really defer to the rest of the board as to what their preference for an interim is, but
Yeah, I mean, I obviously am not gonna be on the board, but the reason I ran in the first place was the last individual I thought that was I didn't like the whole process. Person was put in this place and the last board was, I felt, wasn't properly vetting that candidate to stay. And I didn't like the way I saw that happening, and that's literally the reason I ran. So I would ask you guys to just be careful of something like that.
I don't have a problem with somebody who we would wanna look at, because, for example, we hire somebody, we give them a 1-year contract review. Well, here we got 3 to 6 months to look at them, to say, well, we don't really want you to go for the full-time job. We're gonna look for somebody else, cause we've had a chance to see how you've worked. So it's kind of a plus for them and a plus for us. One, that they think that if they're good enough, they'll work hard enough, and we might just wanna do that. So I don't see a downside from that perspective, cause we certainly don't have to take them and they have to reapply again. You know, and who knows who knows who we'll miss if we don't do that. But I hope they know, there's no guarantee that the board would pick them. Okay.
and that was similar to in previous conversations, just even if there were internal candidates that were interested in the position, that they still had to apply through the process, that we weren't gonna preclude any internal candidates, but they weren't gonna get preferential treatment either.
Right.
They needed to apply as everyone else.
Yep.
Jen, Paul, do you guys have any?
I'm of the same mindset. I don't mind if they're interested in staying, but I agree they would need to go through that process separately, no guarantees, but I don't have a concern with that.
Agreeing with Tom with the last candidate, or the last town administrator that we had. But there was also a very deeply personal issue going on with me at the time, and so when it came time to connect with this gentleman, it didn't go well at all, and so, so understand exactly what Tom had to say about it. So all things considered, we would be looking at someone who would be acceptable to the board, period.
The consensus seems like we wouldn't, that we would be open to it. They would just have to follow the process as any other candidate would be. And I've mentioned, just for, I think, clarification, but for me, I think it's important that town as a whole has a CPL, and so that to me is a priority, but I don't know.
Could you elaborate on that for me? Why that, because I'm not familiar with the CPI, I know what it is, but I'm not familiar with why you think that is so important. Or maybe Austin could answer.
Yeah, Austin, I mean, I think procurement is huge, and we know in the next few months, we very well may have some bigger procurement things coming through, and just ensuring that we have a certified chief procurement officer seems to be the fiscally and most legally responsible thing for town. Austin, I don't know if you can speak.
Yeah, I mean, that along with HR related issues, procurement is one of the things that communities get I guess, for lack of a
Ding dong.
better, yeah, jammed up on, I guess, just to make sure that we're following everything properly, so.
Would most of your candidates that are coming here have CPO? If they were previous town administrators?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And again, I don't know for sure what's gonna happen within the next 3 months, but I could look out 6 months and see that there may be some bigger things that we would wanna be mindful of. Does that give you enough guidance, Austin? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does any other board members have conversation? And then lastly, we have the fiscal year 25 year-end spending controls. Austin, do you want to, I know Donna, you and Donna have looked at the kind of closing of the budget on the fiscal year 25 budget, so.
Yeah, so, request of Donna to get this in front of the board, just for you guys to have I guess, an end of the year policy discussion. This is the time of the year when, you know, maybe oftentimes have like an end of the year spending spree. And oftentimes that means we end up potentially having some line item transfers in front of the board and finance committee. So Donna has done some great work going line by line and taking a look at, you know, prior years, end of the year spending, you know, where historically departments have ended up, and has projected right now, again, wish there was real wood nearby, projecting between a $400,000 and $500,000 turn back. Obviously that's very early, that's, you know, not assuming we don't get another, and it's happened probably, right, big snowstorm and our snow and ice doubles, you know, any other emergency repairs or things like that that come up. So as of right now, between, you know, where we're tracking, you know, pretty decent turn back. We, you know, still have a couple of things that need to be taken care of. Chief and I are working on something at Central Tree Middle School that will slightly, actually that's included in that assumption, so. So the request is to have some guidance from the board to be able to share with town departments. We do have a department head meeting on Thursday that I'd like some clarification to be able to share with them on Thursday, about, you know, what the board's expectations are for the end of the year spending. Do you have any desired turn back levels from departments, which some communities often do at the end of the year? Do you have a threshold for transfers that you you know, deem appropriate or not? So there's things like that that we're just hoping to have a little bit of a discussion amongst the board so we can share that with departments.
And I think last year about this time, we did something similar. I don't remember exactly what our guidance was, but I believe it was something similar as far as trying to preserve some level of turn back.
Yeah, so I'd asked departments last year to provide an estimate of their turn back. I learned maybe that's not the way to do it. Because I, you know, and absolutely nothing, because I would do it too, but you know, maybe some of those estimates were a little bit lower than we'd like, and maybe assumed some expenses for end of the year that maybe aren't totally necessary. So that's why I think it'd be helpful if you know, the board has a discussion about, you know, do you want to maintain a turn back of approximately, you know, whether it's a percentage of their budget or percentage of the overall budget that we can then share and you know, really ask departments to be mindful of their end of the year spending. And you know, as we're getting closer to the end of the year, making sure all expenses are truly essential as we're, you know, really depleting our free cash with next year's budget. So trying to replenish as much as possible back to free cash.
And I think some of the things, some of the considerations could be a complete spending freeze, essentially for only essentials, a hiring freeze. We know that we have the DPW mechanic and everything open, or if we wanted to look at approvals of over a certain, as Austin mentioned, over a certain dollar threshold for transfers, or to Austin's point, if we wanna do a certain percentage back from the departments or trying to maintain the, you know, the $400,000 to $500,000 in turn back and how that looks as a percentage of the budgets. So conversation for the board. And yes, sir.
Seth Lane, Fire Chief. I have a concern with this. As a department head and many department heads in town, we defer purchases of new equipment to the end of the fiscal year because we're so short funded that if something breaks during the year, we need to use that money if something broke. So if we get into May and June and nothing is failed or broken that we had to emergency repair, now this money is available that we've budgeted for equipment purchases. And so some people say we go on a spending spree in June. It's been authorized and approved by town meeting. It's been in front of the finance committee and this board that approved the budget to buy this equipment. And that's what the fire department at least does in June. So to put a cap or a spending cut or a $200 or $500 limit is terrible. And with our budget for next year, there are certain tangible items that don't expire that we could pre-buy. Medical equipment, medications, things like that, that would help us get through the next fiscal year. So just putting that out there.
So my response is have that discussion with me and Donna and we can, you know, work that out, right? And, you know, to give you an example, I'm not gonna call it the department, but I had a department and having a discussion about turn back, requested a transfer. And when asked for detail, it was purchasing double the equipment that wasn't necessary. Now, when having that discussion with the individual, we only approved what was essential, right? So I think the point is to have a policy sort of level discussion amongst the board and allow me and Donna to work through and have that discussion, right? We're not gonna say no to buying medical supplies, chief, right? I don't think that's, you know, really the purpose of this policy discussion, right?
Well, you're asking them to set a policy that would restrict you and Donna from letting us do our job.
No, I think it was more asking the department, essentially saying at a certain dollar amount, that then there needs to be a conversation with the administrator and the finance director, accountant, before just doing the direct line item transfers.
Yeah, chief, I mean, I think we gave them options, right? I mean, I think I would agree with you, that's probably the most extreme, right? To say that, you know, you need to turn back 1% of each of your, for example, right? 1% of each of your line items. I think one of the, probably the easiest ones is to maybe say, and again, just using an example, 1% of the overall budget, right? And I don't know what those numbers are, right? We'd have to figure that out and maybe you can do some math real quick, but, or to try to maximize and say that they wanna maintain at least a $300,000 turn back. That gives me and Donna a lot of flexibility. You need to spend, I'm gonna say, let's say $100,000, well, then that means I'm gonna have to try to work closer with someone else to try to turn that back. But ultimately, that's, I think, why we need to have end of the year spending controls, right? To be able to try to maximize as much as possible, right? We don't have to do this every year. We should have some sort of spending control every year. But I think the reason why this is really prudent is how much free cash we are using. Right, we've got, at this point, we'll have less than our policy levels call for. So I just wanna make sure that we're closing the year as smooth as possible and having those discussions to encumber what is critical for departments at the end of the year, which we do every year, right?
So
Didn't we already talk about isn't there $1,000 limit we have a policy for already?
I think, so that was the discussion we were talking about, like purchase orders and purchasing.
Yep, is this
so-
not the same that we're talking
No,
about?
so we have acquired the module through Vadar. Vadar is working with Donna to implement that. That won't be ready until the new fiscal year. So right now, we don't have a system to be able to implement the purchase orders for the town. So that's, I think, why we're coming with a second request or a different request to be a little bit more clear about more so driving turn back rather than limiting purchasing throughout the year, like a purchase order would.
And I think the conversation definitely knowing what the budget is like for next year, I think there is the consideration that departments may be looking to spend for the non-expiring consumables because they know that the budget next year is tight. Also, we are, to Austin's point, we're utilizing most of our free cash, and there's a lot of chatter around that all of it's gonna go at town meeting from motions on the floor. So I think that having some level of free cash in turn back is wise. If we don't know what snow and ice is gonna look like next year. This year, I believe it's in the
Not yet, no, not yet, almost 150-ish.
Okay. So, and there's been some years that it's been 250 or higher, so we don't know what that's gonna look like either, but so trying to balance the needs of the departments with the potential need for next year is a consideration also. I think since I've been on the board many years, we've had some level of end of year kind of policy spending controls, just because we need to try to be mindful of that, unfortunately. So I don't have in my head, Austin, I don't have a certain kind of approval, like conversation with town administrator, finance director over a certain dollar amount. 1% of the operating budget is probably what, around 300,000?
340,000.
340.
Well, hold on, that's not fair to include the schools in that, though, right?
True.
Right,
I was
so
gonna say,
yeah,
I was
so
gonna
we
take
would-
the schools out, so I was thinking maybe 150, 200,000, somewhere in that.
That'd be amazing if we had that.
And so that's, I think, where I was kind of heading, but also potentially the conversation with a dollar amount conversation for line item transfers and everything, with the town administrator, finance director as well.
What's been the average type of environment where one of these would apply? Or two of them would apply?
One or two of what, sorry?
Well,
The spending controls?
well, yeah, like hiring freeze, have we done that in the past? Spending freezes, have we applied those in the past? Dollar value, max spending freeze, and then turn back for the rest. I mean, has there been any consensus on the operating system of which one of these would work the best? Or no?
I don't think, in my experience, we have done in the past kind of spending freezes that only essentials were spent. I believe that was a few years ago. I don't recall.
That was COVID?
No, that was, I think maybe, was that the override year that there was potential of not having the override go? And there was talk of, I believe there was a spending freeze in the sense of non-essentials needed to be approved.
I would think it would have been 23, so it would have been beginning of FY 24.
Yeah, yeah. I don't recall hiring freeze explicitly. I think generally if there's an open position and the forecast for the next fiscal year is to support it, it's been filled. And which in this current budget of for the fiscal year 26, everything has been, staff level has been maintained. And then the approval over certain dollar amounts, I think, has been utilized kind of fluidly throughout the years. Correct me if I'm wrong, chief. And that's not to,
It's always been a strongly worded letter from the TA to the department heads of watch what you're doing,
right,
so.
right.
So,
And it's not to restrict the absolute necessities, it's to you know, to chief's concern, it's not to restrict the actual necessities of the departments, but it's also to ensure that there's some level of turn back, and especially in a year going into next year where we potentially have well less than $100,000 of free cash going forward. that's an avenue to.
Having spent some time in the communications industry, it was not unusual this time of year to hear from various directors and chiefs and whatnot about, I have this amount of money left in my budget, what's on sale, okay? So I mean, it's always been kind of an SOP thing that, they wanna clear the books and start in with their new budget, that's what their plans are, so it's not unusual to run it that way either.
And I think on the flip side, it's not uncommon to have, like, we have the mandate of, significant cost and spending reductions as well. So I don't think that that's uncommon, and I think providing an avenue still for the conversations that it's not the board micromanaging, it's not FinCom micromanaging, it's a conversation with the town administrator and the town accountant to ensure, or the finance director to ensure that it's a true need. To your point, the budget was approved but at the same time, we need to make sure that it's being utilized for the.
Is, just for my own clarification, the turn back, that's essentially asking departments not to spend X amount of their budget?
Well, if that's one of the options that you choose, if it's an overall, turn back the overall budget amount, that would encourage us to be a little bit more creative with how we're gonna do that. But yes, I mean, that would be a discussion that would say, just using Chief cause he's in the room, Chief, can you turn back, which we had a discussion last year, actually, very similar discussion. He said, I can turn back $16,000 or something.
45.
It was 45. No, in the wages line item,
Yes.
yeah. And so it would allow us to kind of have deeper discussions about how we're gonna be able to get to that overall number. You can turn back 45 this year?
Oh, sorry.
I'm kidding.
I will.
You done?
I can hit 2%.
I think my only follow-up question is what about departments that have already spent their budgets?
Well, and I think that's why if it were a percent of the total budget versus each department budget, then it provides some latitude for how those.
And
I don't
you're
think
gonna
that's
find,
very
I mean,
fair, though.
obviously the smaller budgets are probably already
Right.
mostly expended, and most of their budgets are wages, right? So, we're not gonna ask them to not work for.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
So, yeah. But there's,
But-
certainly I think line items that have, and the select board have some of that as well in some of your expenses, right? So, there's things that may be discretionary over the next few weeks or months that we'll have to just cut back or limit.
I think.
Through the chair. Are you proposing, get my brain going here, are you proposing that we add some type of year-end spending policy to our financial policy?
Maybe not add, if you want to maybe modify an existing
Yeah,
policy.
okay, something to look at. To kind of look at some of this stuff and modify that for previous, or next year, the year after that, as far as a policy?
Yeah,
That's why I was asking, which one of these works, because trying to,
Maybe I would stray away from having something hard in a policy, because year over year, it may change, right?
Okay.
We had a great year in fiscal year '24 because every department had so much money compared to previous years. It did. Chief.
We were funded appropriately, doesn't mean we had a windfall of money.
But you did,
We went to
Chief.
town meeting, an override was passed to support the services.
You had so much more money than previous years. You can't disagree with that.
But we went to the public and we sold them on, this is the level of service.
I agree with you, but you still had a turn back, right, of $45,000, right? So whether it's on wages or things like that, right? So you still had more money at the end of the year.
But even the years I had no money, I was still turning back $40,000 in payroll every single year.
So we could talk about wages, right? But even on supplies, right?
I've been
And-
zero
Well,
on
so hold on.
supplies every year.
I don't want you to take this discussion personal, like I'm talking about you, right? And I feel like you are. This discussion is meant for the entire organization, especially our budget. Our budget has more money than we probably need, to be honest.
yeah.
And I'm talking about select board and town administrator. So I'm guilty of it. we don't need $20,000 in our purchase services line item, to be honest. So that's why it's reduced. So there's, I think, discussions like that, Chief, that's where, because in FY '24, not just talking about you, but every department had more resources. I don't disagree that you sold an override, but there were certainly line items across the entire organization that we added things, right? And whether we didn't spend it because things changed, we got a grant, whatever, we resulted in a turn back. So, Harry, I don't even remember what your original question was.
That's right, I'm listening, and
I think that's where, so it was about if you need a hard and fast policy. This is where I think that maybe a discussion like this should happen right around this time of the year, every year with the select board. And then we can receive feedback from departments and you can have this discussion with departments about this is what the select board would like to see for a turn back. Because you don't have, strong internal controls on limiting that purchasing during the year, the purchase orders may help with that, depending on how successful that system goes. Right now, this is the only way that you guys can truly kind of try to encourage a turn back at the end of the year.
And I think,
And-
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think in this year, knowing how much free cash we're applying to next year's budget, and that we're going to carry forward very little free cash. And the rumblings around the community as to what may happen on town meeting floor with the little bit of remaining free cash that we think we have.
Oh, yeah.
That's my concern, is that we go into next year with $0. Our financial policies say we should carry forward, I believe it's 150 into the next year for free cash. And so my concern this year is that we are starting from a balance well below 150. And that's if the budget as presented goes.
So I guess my question is that I see what you're trying to say, that all of these different policy year-end spending issues can change. So one year, maybe you've got more money for a hiring freeze because you did it. So that, another year it could be the spending freeze that could be put into effect. But it's not all of that will come into 1 year.
Well, even next year alone, every department is taking hits, especially on their purchase service and supply. So your discussion next year, I suspect, will be very different about what a potential turnback would be, because departments naturally will have less to buy supplies and services.
Okay.
I think we cut almost $600,000 or $700,000 out of the budget, just in most of those were supplies and services.
So I think Paul and Tom, I don't know if you have any kind of considerations. It seems a little bit like maybe a total percent of the total budget, whether that's 1% of the total Rutland specific budget, which I believe would be, what do we call that number, Seth?
Sorry.
I said, what did we call the 1% number, the 250 or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how that looks, but that's less than the kind of projected $400,000 to $500,000 projection that Donna is looking at, and still provides an opportunity for additional cost savings. I don't know if that, plus conversations with the town administrator and finance director for purchases or transfers over, I don't know, a good number, $500 or $1,000. Jen, I think the PO was $1,000, right? That's what so I don't know if something along those lines. Just again, not to prevent town from doing business, but to just provide some controls.
Is the turnback a requirement if it goes through, or is it just something we're aiming to try and shoot for?
I think it'd be a target, cause again, you could put a requirement and then all of a sudden, the example of a massive snowstorm and we completely, blow all of our budgets and,
Well, that's
But that's
my
why
concern.
I wanna be able to have some guidance to be able to go on Thursday and have these discussions with departments and say, we had a discussion about this is what the board would like to target for a turn back, and, we'll discuss, Donna and I will reach out to you to discuss any ways that we can do that within your respective lines. to be able to have those in-depth discussions during the next few weeks.
So we're looking at, what you had said is, if our town budget, forget the schools for a second, if our town budget is, say, 13 million, then we're looking at $130,000 of turnback across the whole organization if we set a 1%. That's kind of what we're looking to do, establish something like that. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the considerations for sure that we could do, and that would provide a lot more latitude to town administrator, finance, and the department heads as to how that looks.
How we take the 1% from.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you could be more aggressive if you want. I mean, 1%, I heard Chief say that's easy. It's true. That's only 117,000, right?
We could go up to even 3%, I think, based on
If you
kind
want
of
to.
Donna's projections
Okay.
of,
Okay.
again, and that's just a target, and obviously if there's strong needs, those conversations happen at the department head level with the TA and finance director.
Can we get a year-over-year analysis of, say, the last 5 years, what the turnbacks were?
Yep, I'll give it to you right now. So in FY '24, it was $670,000. FY '23, $256,000. FY '22, $345,000. FY '21, $352,000.
And I think that last year with the big turnback was we had put ARPA into a couple of these, I believe we had put ARPA and even maybe some CARES money or something into the operating budget that then freed, essentially created turnback, forced turnback into free cash. We had that conversation that we were doing that last year with the intent of applying.
Yep, and we'll do that again to close our ARPA. We have $100 and some odd thousand, I think, will be the amount, give or take, that will apply to the school assessment. So that'll increase. And then also just, we're not even talking about revenue. So any excess revenue will also add to your free cash allotment. But turnback's just one of the mechanisms to drive free cash generation.
So, okay.
So what is the board's leaning for? We've had an ask from the finance director and accountant and the town administrator to kind of have a policy for the year-end spending controls. So that's an ask from our department heads, our finance team department heads, and how that looks, and providing the opportunity not for the board to micromanage or totally stop the departments from functioning, but having some controls. So are we thinking a certain percentage of the total budget in turnback, and what number? 1% would be, let's call it 120,000, 2% would be 240, 3% would be 360-ish, right, Austin?
Yeah, if I'm looking at our turnbacks, I'm just basic calculating probably 3%, because if you look at the turnback amount based on our town expenditure, we're probably close to 3% on that.
It was more for FY '24, but yeah, between maybe 2 and 3%. Is that fair to say, Chief? Yeah. Just I'm thinking, obviously, as budgets have grown too.
Because that kind of would equal what those years were that we had turnbacks to begin with, to give us something to shoot for.
So we could say aim for 3% of the total budget, and then
Yeah.
obviously that's guidance, and there's conversations that happen with the department heads and the town administrator for the district.
So this is where we don't want to establish permanent policy then.
Correct.
We look at this, so we
Right.
have flexibility. Okay.
Yeah, next year you may have, your administrator may come to you and say it's gonna be impossible to turn back even one, right? And that's just one, making sure to let you guys know about where things are.
And then
You're gonna
that's
see that
also,
as well in your budget reports too.
Yeah.
Right, so you're gonna see where, and I know I've heard from some of you about, flagging different line items, why are they so high during this time of the year, and usually there's a good explanation for it, so.
So is there a motion to request or suggest to aim for a 3% turn of the town side operating budget turn back?
Is just.
No, go for it.
What, if we did 3%, what's the estimate this year?
Just 3% quickly on our budget of 11.7 million, it's 351.
350. Yeah, I'd say so. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Motion on that, yeah.
Yep.
And obviously that's policy
If
level
we beat
guidance.
it, everyone looks good, we'll give the
Right.
chief a GFOA award.
Whoa, if we get a yes from him, we didn't go high enough.
So is that a motion,
That's a motion, yeah.
Harry? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other conversation? Roll call, Harry,
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. We have for future agenda requests, we had the public comment, Tamika, we can look at the calendar for the upcoming meetings, for that. Is there any other future agenda request items?
I don't know if it's an agenda request, but, and this was brought up in the administrator update, I'm sorry, but just wanted to ask where things are with the pool.
So they drained the pool, I haven't had it, cause I took a couple days off last week, I haven't had a chance to talk with Karina about the evaluation that they did on the pool surface to see if we need to do a complete replacement, but as you can see probably by driving by, it's empty, so I can follow up with her and let you know.
That's why I'm asking, because we're getting to the point where it's gonna
Fill up
open, and
again.
if it's not open, what are we gonna do?
Yeah,
I mean, I think it doesn't usually open until the last weekend of
School's
school.
out, yeah.
Because of staffing, but that's a month or a little bit, month and a half, so,
Depending on what has to get done.
yeah.
so it sounded like my most recent conversation before, actually when they started draining, was that it looked like there was not necessarily a need to do a complete replacement, but more so of patching different areas. So one, saving a lot of money overall in the scope of work, and then just overall faster repair. But I'll follow up and let you know.
Any other future agenda requests? Our upcoming select board meetings, we have annual town meeting on May 10th. The board will be posted for 5:30. As usual, town meeting starts at 6. We have the Tuesday, May 13th, it's Tuesday following the annual town election. I believe there's some public hearings scheduled, National Grid poll hearing. Tamika, is that, that was a little bit time sensitive for that piece. And then Tuesday following Memorial Day is May 27th, 2025. So this is our last Monday night meeting with Tom. So thanks, Tom, for the past 3 years. It's been, I've really enjoyed working with you and serving with you. And I look forward to you being out there now and holding us accountable.
Yeah, I just wanna thank everyone that put me in this position. I always tried to do my best and vote for what I thought was in favor or best for the town. So hopefully I didn't disappoint.
Has your job changed, Tom, that allows you more time now?
No, I'm still, no, the shift isn't.
Well, I was thinking of family, now that you're not on the board anymore.
Well, that, yeah, I won't get divorced for at least another 2 months, so that's good.
Okay.
But it's been fun, it's been interesting,
Yeah.
but good luck, guys.
Learned a lot about the town, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Is there any other business before the board? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 8:48, Tamika, thank you.
Thanks, Tom, for.
Thanks, yes, yep, good luck.
Yeah, sounds like we might.
Get a lot of
you.